Chapter 4261. Fellow Taoist, we already know about Buddha Bodhi, but what's going on with this heavenly demon of joy? This happened too suddenly, and there were no signs at all. I really don't know what's going on. Bonhon Xiaohua was the most outspoken. After understanding the knot between Xiaohua and Buddha Bodhi, he immediately asked about the heavenly demon of joy. It's actually very simple. At this moment, Xiaohua looked at everyone and explained, "It's just like what fellow Taoist soul cultivator told everyone earlier." Then, Xiaohua explained the details of the matter to him. In fact, as early as when Xiaohua saw the Buddha statue of Jiang Luer's previous life in the shrine, Xiaohua had doubts about his own Buddhist cultivation, and the target of this suspicion naturally fell on Buddha Bodhi. Even though Buddha Bodhi was explaining, his explanation was actually Xiaohua's self-reflection, and it was not enough to dispel Xiaohua's doubts. At this moment, Xiaohua's heart had already been planted with the demon. The Buddha statue in the shrine had tears in its eyes, and the Buddha statue had been torn apart in its heart. This was not done by Maitreya Buddha, but by the heavenly demon of joy to lure Xiaohua into becoming a demon. At that time, Xiaohua did not have any doubts. Later, when the dragon pattern appeared, the dragon pattern stone giant of the same lineage regarded the stone giant, who worshipped Namo Maitreya, as an enemy, and this made Xiaohua see two undercurrents in the Eldritch continent. Since there were undercurrents, there was naturally a mastermind behind the scenes. Xiaohua naturally believed that the mastermind behind the scenes was Namo Maitreya, and the god of the dragon race. Of course, Xiaohua already knew that Namo Maitreya had reincarnated, so the mastermind behind the scenes must be the dragon race, or the successor of Namo Maitreya. After Xiaohua learned about the imperial palace from devouring heaven, he entered the imperial palace to defeat the 5 small eldritch beasts, rescued Dragon Gate Xiaohua and Phoenix Body Xiaohua, and even subdued the Black Jade Qilin. The target of Xiaohua's suspicion fell on the successor of Namo Maitreya. After all, the Imperial Heaven Tower had existed for many years, and according to the Black Jade Qilin, every once in a while, the Imperial Heaven Tower would open up, and weapons and crystals would appear. This kind of miracle would not appear out of thin air. There must be an invisible hand behind it. However, Dragon Vein Xiaohua was a 5-clawed golden dragon. He was injured in Chaotian Tower, yet no dragons appeared. This could only mean that there were no dragons, or their descendants in Chaotian Tower, or that there was a dragon that looked down on the 5-clawed golden dragon. Apart from this possibility, it could only be the successor of the Maitreya Buddha. Moreover, this Imperial Heaven Tower was originally the exquisite derivation pagoda that opened the heaven and earth. This further confirmed Xiaohua's conjecture. However, as the Fortune Gate disciples' teaching power expanded, and Xiaohua witnessed the power of the Dragon Clan's faith, a new idea surfaced in his mind. He did not think that the Dragon Tribe and the Buddhist sect, who were fighting fiercely on the primitive continent, did not fight in the Imperial Palace. The Dragon Clan would not allow the Buddhist sect to build the Imperial Palace of Heaven without taking any action. However, other than the Imperial Heaven Tower, there was no other Imperial Heaven Tower in the Fortune Gate's territory, which made Xiaohua even more suspicious. When Xiaohua learned from Lu Yi that someone was spying on him, he saw the Buddha statue that was split in two inside the lava giant's body. At that time, Xiaohua suddenly had a feeling that something was wrong. Because the Buddhist sect emphasized on imperceptible influence, even if it was Buddhism, the more simple it was, the higher the level it was. How could the Buddhist sect use bloody tears as a warning? If it was faint tears, then that was the real Buddhist sect's realm. Of course, the stone giant's body was covered in lava, and using lava to make tears would always be red. This was reasonable. But the most unusual thing was that the Buddha statue had cracked. What was even stranger was that the stone giant had only wept bitterly at the beginning, and then later, it did not seem to care. At least, it was not as pious as Xiaohua had imagined. The Buddha statue had always been a symbol of faith, and with the stone giant's faith power, it was impossible for the Buddha statue to crack, even if Buddha Bodhi was teaching the stone giant. Even when the Buddha Lord's Buddha fruit was replaced, the Buddha statue would not crack, and only its appearance would change. Although the Buddha's statue cracked, Xiaohua's heart also cracked, but it also made Xiaohua suspicious. Xiaohua suspected that the Buddha's statue and the stone giant's faith were two completely different things. When Xiaohua went to another group of stone giants to look at the dragon god statue in the shrine, he had a whimsical idea. He believed that the dragon tribe's descendant and the Buddhist sect's successor did not exist on the primitive continent, and that there was only a third force that borrowed the dragon tribe's and Buddhist sect's power. As for who the third force was, Xiaohua suspected it was the heavenly devil. In truth, there was no special reason or divine ability, but Xiaohua had suffered too much from the heavenly devil recently. Xiaohua felt like a bow cup in a snake's shadow. Since he had a suspect, Xiaohua naturally had to come up with a countermeasure. However, Xiaohua already knew that he might have been possessed by the heavenly devil, and even his other clones might be tainted by the devil qi. If he was not careful, he might be taken advantage of by the heavenly devil. Therefore, Xiaohua could only choose the soul cultivator Xiaohua, who was connected to him in terms of soul, to be his helper. He only told the soul cultivator Xiaohua about his thoughts in the mysterious dark cloud, and told him to hide in the Shenhua continent. He even told him not to tell his other clones, and not to come out of the Shenhua continent, unless it was a critical moment. However, with the appearance of the heaven-devouring beast and Di Ting, Xiaohua felt that his worries were groundless, because all his previous suspicions were perfectly explained by the two beasts. Even the heaven-connecting peak in Chaotian Tower could be attributed to the reckless dragon god. However, Xiaohua was still cautious, and did not let the soul cultivator Xiaohua appear in Chaotian Tower. And the result was exactly what his clones saw. Xiaohua's suspicions were correct. Besides the dragon god and Nanwamethria, there was indeed a third almighty on the Eldritch continent, and that was the heavenly devil. As for why the dragon god and Nanwamethria came to the Eldritch continent, and whether the heavenly devil came with them, Xiaohua did not know. Damn it! The bone-honing Xiaohua was dumbfounded when he heard this. His jaw almost dropped to the ground. It's so complicated. I saw all of this with my own eyes. But why didn't I feel anything special? So, Xiaohua smiled and said, fellow Taoist bone-honing, and fellow Taoists, you still have a long way to go. If you want to be a real cultivator, you have to be a real person first. Damn it, I am not a person to begin with. Why should I be a person? Dragon Vein Xiaohua used the mountain and river seal to suppress the heaven and earth pagoda in the sky and shouted loudly. But his voice was full of joy. There is no such pagoda in the world without a foundation. Even if the heaven-connecting peak can reach the sky, its foundation is still deeply embedded in the earth. Xiaohua replied with a smile. If you want to become an almighty and move unhindered in the three realms, you have to first lay a good foundation. Humanity, emotions, and experience are all indispensable. This heaven and earth pagoda has no foundation, and Great Master's exquisite derivation pagoda also has no foundation. Green-robed Xiaohua took the opportunity to kick up a fuss. Xiaohua smiled and was about to speak, but his expression suddenly changed, and he said to Xiaohua, "Oh right, fellow Taoist Confucian, when Great Master was attaining enlightenment, the heavenly devil said that this incomplete Eldritch continent is in the turbulent flow of time. The Buddhist light of the Buddha realm cannot shine, and the devil nation has no passage to this place. Even the heavenly devil is trapped here. Then, why did fellow Taoist choose Wensu that day? If I'm not mistaken, Confucian cultivators should have divine abilities that Buddhists don't have. Fellow Taoists, please take care of it. We might not be able to leave this place without fellow Taoists' divine abilities. As Confucian cultivators say, one can't reach 1,000 miles without taking a few steps. If one wants to reach 1,000 miles, one can reach a higher level." The Confucian cultivator Xiaohua nodded. "I've heard some news from the sage of literature, and I've also gained some insights in this regard. After we resolve the calamity in the primitive continent and leave the imperial palace, I'll work with fellow immortal Green Robe and fellow immortal Soul Cultivator to improve the teleportation formation. Of course, since a female immortal from the immortal world left this place, we should have a chance." "Good." Xiaohua nodded and looked at the 7th floor of the Heaven and Earth Pagoda. A mysterious smile hung on the corner of his mouth as he said, "Now that the imperial court's matter has been settled, let's see what it is that requires the Maitreya Buddha Tsaili to suppress." While speaking, Xiaohua looked up again. Far away from the heaven and earth pagoda, the heaven-swallowing beast was hiding behind a mountain range with the nine-toothed rake in its hand, looking very nervous. "Hee, this little guy is probably scared out of his wits." Xiaohua smiled and waved his hand. A large hand appeared out of thin air and covered the heaven-swallowing beast. The heaven-swallowing beast was very anxious and waved its nine-toothed rake to resist. "Don't be afraid," Xiaohua said. "This old man has already killed the heavenly demon. Now there are only a few of us left in the Imperial Heaven Tower. Besides, if this old man wants to kill you, why would I need to go through so much trouble?" The heaven-swallowing beast was already in awe of Xiaohua. Now that it saw the space being sealed, it naturally had the intention and the ability to break this cage. However, after hearing Xiaohua's words, it gave up on resisting. It only held the nine-toothed rake in its hand and was taken into the heaven and earth pagoda with unusual vigilance. "Let's go." Xiaohua looked at the heaven-swallowing beast's vigilance and said indifferently, "Although you are related to Di Ting and followed him into the Imperial Heaven Tower, you are also fated to be with this old man. Today, this old man will give you a share of the merit of saving the billions of lives in the primitive continent. This can be considered as living up to your Dharma name of Jieqi." The heaven-swallowing beast was stunned and muttered a few words. However, in the end, it didn't say anything. After all, the scene just now was really frightening. The heaven-swallowing beast couldn't let down its guard for a while. Soul Cultivator Xiaohua, Bone Tempering Xiaohua, Phoenix Body Xiaohua, and Devil Spirit Xiaohua returned. Moreover, Confucian Cultivator Xiaohua still activated the 9 cauldrons to suppress the heaven and earth pagoda and open the 7th floor of the pagoda. The pagoda turned into a pure white camellia flower. Chapter 4262. 7 mysterious lights rushed out of the camellia, and the whole space was immediately enveloped by the 7 lights. All the light and shadows dimmed. When Xiaohua's eyes fell on the source of the lights, he saw a Buddhist treasure that looked like 7 bamboo joints and 7 tree branches floating in the camellia. However, no matter what the illusion of the Buddhist treasure was, there were still 7 layers of extremely obscure waves that penetrated into the heaven and earth pagoda. Within these 7 layers of waves was an absolute space that no one's gaze or Buddhist consciousness could enter. The Tree of 7 Wonders? Bodhi could not help but cry out in surprise. "Why is it here? Is this what Maitreya Buddha's Kaili is suppressing?" "Master, you're wrong." Xiaohua's divine mind swept over and immediately understood. He smiled and said, "This thing is the same as Panga's axe. It's not the real Tree of 7 Wonders. It's just a shell or a shadow. Like Panga's axe, it's a Buddhist treasure of Maitreya Buddha Lord. Maitreya Buddha Lord's Kaili is placed in the 8th level of the pagoda not to suppress this thing, but to control it. The 6th level of the pagoda under this thing is what the heaven demon of nirvana needs to suppress." Xiaohua raised his hand and grabbed. Sure enough, where his hand passed, the Tree of 7 Wonders turned into a shadow. Xiaohua could not hold the Buddhist treasure at all. "Master," Xiaohua smiled and said, "It seems that one who survives a great disaster is bound to have good fortune later. The Buddhist treasure will finally fall into your hands." "I'm afraid that the multicolored light in the imperial palace that day was emitted by this thing." Dragon Vein Xiaohua and Phoenix Body Xiaohua looked at each other and said almost in unison, "Congratulations, Grandmaster, congratulations. What's there to be happy about?" Bodhi shook his head slightly. "Everything is just a reflection of the moon in the water. Only my Buddha is real." However, Bodhi still chanted Buddhist mantras and came before the Tree of 7 Wonders. He raised his hand and held the Buddhist treasure. "Namo Maitreya Buddha, Namo Maitreya Buddha." The Buddhist chant filled the whole space, and Bodhi easily held the Tree of 7 Wonders in his hand. "Haha, fate is too wonderful for words." Xiaohua laughed loudly. He knew very well that the heaven and earth pagoda itself was a unique treasure. It was used by the heavenly demon to support the reversal of space. Inside the heaven and earth pagoda, It was used to suppress the formation I of the innate heavy water flood formation. The Heaven and Earth Pagoda was divided into 9 levels. Panga's axe was on the 9th level, Ancient Sili was on the 8th level, and now the Tree of 7 Wonders was on the 7th level. He really could not figure out what better things were in the other levels of the Heaven and Earth Pagoda. After putting away the Tree of 7 Wonders, Buddha Bodhi continued to stand by the side. However, the Tree of 7 Wonders did not leave the Heaven and Earth Pagoda. This was because there were strange waves rushing out from the 6th level of the Heaven and Earth Pagoda, as if the whole pagoda was about to burst. What is this? Xiaohua frowned as he muttered in his heart. I actually have to rely on the wonderful Tree of 7 Treasures to suppress it. I won't release something that I can't control, right? Thinking of this, Xiaohua said to Bodhi, Grandmaster, be careful. If there are any accidents, immediately activate the Buddhist treasure. Bodhi smiled bitterly and said, Don't worry, Tanyu. As long as I can do it, I'll definitely do my best. Bodhi's words naturally revealed his lack of confidence, indicating that he might not be able to control the Tree of 7 Wonders. However, Xiaohua still gritted his teeth and said, Fellow immortal Confucian cultivator, open the 6th level of the pagoda. At worst, we'll destroy this inverted space and overturn the Great Formation. Fellow Taoist, your thinking is too simple. The green-robed Xiaohua was a formation grandmaster. He curled his lips and said, If we could break the formation like this, would we still need to break it layer by layer? Xiaohua stared at the Heaven and Earth Pagoda with a solemn expression. When Xiaohua opened the 6th layer of the Heaven and Earth Pagoda, the body of the pagoda transformed into the shape of an orchid. Xiaohua and the others were dumbfounded, because there was nothing inside the orchid at all. The previous fluctuations had all disappeared without a trace. Strange. Xiaohua was greatly surprised. After his divine sense swept over, he opened his delirium destruction Dharma eye. However, before he could open it, a bewitching blue color instantly pierced into his Dharma eye, and even a cold and astringent feeling like a gust of wind was born from his Dharma eye. The origin of wind. Xiaohua was really ecstatic. He shouted almost without hesitation, Fellow Taoists, we've struck gold. Quickly prepare. As he spoke, Xiaohua released his divine sense. Within the space, the origin of wood that had yet to be refined immediately spread out. Xiaohua guided his fists into the orchid and slowly displayed the Big Dipper divine fist. Haha, great! Great! This is what I like the most. The bone-honing Xiaohua was the happiest. His figure also landed on top of Xiaohua's head. Wind whooshed out of his fists, as he displayed the fist technique together with his body. The Big Dipper divine fist that others couldn't learn no matter what was displayed by the two of them, at the same time was truly dazzling. Like the other origins, the origin of wind didn't have any special resistance under the attraction of the starry sky fluctuations. It quickly entered Xiaohua's body, and tempered his body with the flow of the Big Dipper divine fist, before finally entering the space. However, it was somewhat different from the other origins. As soon as the origin of wind entered the space, the entire space immediately produced a whistling sound. Then, the entire space seemed to be stretched, producing a strange change. Not good. Xiaohua turned pale with fright. At this time, there were billions of living beings in his space. How could it tolerate the slightest bit of change? Almost without hesitation, Xiaohua's divine sense entered the space. However, when Jade Archive Xiaohua stood firmly in the space, his brows were tightly knitted together again. The entire space was indeed different from before, and it was very different. Everything in front of him was somewhat blurry and distorted. Even the appearance of the Fortune Gate's disciples on the Shenhua mainland seemed somewhat unreal. However, other than this distortion, there were no other obvious changes. Not only were all the living beings growing normally, even the Hua Lishan's heavenly devil avatar, that wasn't killed, was bewitching some Fortune Gate's disciples who had fallen into the devil path. Everything was no different from before. What is going on? Jade Archive Xiaohua was truly puzzled. Could it be that there are changes in the space that even I don't know about? At this time, the green-robed Xiaohua also came in from outside the space and asked curiously, Fellow Taoist, Why did you rush into the Shenhua mainland without any reason? What the hell happened? Jade Archive Xiaohua smiled slightly and looked at the green-robed Xiaohua's blurry and distorted figure, asking, "What? Don't you feel that there are some changes in the Shenhua mainland?" "Is that so?" The green-robed Xiaohua looked around in bewilderment and asked curiously, "No? I didn't find anything different." "Is everything exactly the same as before?" Jade Archive Xiaohua asked. "Of course it's exactly the same. I really didn't find anything different." The green-robed Xiaohua looked again, and even moved his hands to attract lightning, carefully comprehending the power of lightning before answering. Jade Archive Xiaohua looked meaningfully at the space and nodded, saying, "Perhaps. I was thinking too much. Let's go, let's see what the wind origin is suppressing." "Haha, is there still a need to say?" The green-robed Xiaohua flew out of the space with the Jade Archive Xiaohua as he replied, "Previously, we had been guessing the origin of this innate heavy water. Now that even the origin of wind has appeared, the origin of wind must be suppressing the origin of water. This is the only way to explain how so much innate heavy water came to be." Xiaohua's mind returned to its original position, and his spirit shook. He clapped his hands and said, "Good, I also think so. If we have the water origin, our 5 elemental origins will be complete, and the light escape technique will enter a whole new level." Under everyone's gaze, the scholarly cultivator Xiaohua opened the 5th layer of the Heaven and Earth Pagoda. Seeing the purple chrysanthemum in the pagoda, Xiaohua scanned it with his divine sense and was overjoyed, because there was nothing in his divine sense. Moreover, there was a kind of heavy fluctuation in the entire chrysanthemum that went straight into the 4th layer of the pagoda. Wasn't this the water origin he was thinking of? However, when he opened his illusion breaker eyes, his eyes were filled with dazzling purple lightning patterns. Xiaohua was absolutely dumbfounded. "What? Why is it the lightning origin? Could it be that the water origin is in the 4th layer of the pagoda? Oh, I understand now." At this moment, Xiaohua suddenly had a kind of enlightenment and said in surprise, "Fellow Taoists, do you still remember the white bones we picked up from the dozen or so big pillars under the lava where the stone giant was? Those white bones either had the power to kill with lightning, or a fine penetrating power. They were all killed by the lightning origin and wind origin. They were probably killed by the wind and lightning, because they wanted to collect these things." Xiaohua was astonished when the lightning origin was revealed. Not only was there lightning vibrating on the pagoda, but the entire space was also shaken, and countless purple colors dyed the surroundings. "Great Master, quickly make a move." Seeing the purple color in the illusion breaker eyes fly up like the rising sun, Xiaohua was startled and hurriedly called out, "Namo Maitreya Buddha." Buddha Bodhi chanted Buddha's name, and raised the 7 wonders tree to block it. However, just as he raised his hand, the Buddha's light on the golden body rapidly dimmed. Obviously, he couldn't activate the 7 wonders tree. Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent and shouted, "Fellow Taoist tempered bones, let's attack together." "Okay." Tempered bones Xiaohua saw the lightning origin, and almost somersaulted in midair. Hearing Xiaohua's order, he happily responded and rushed into the sky to activate the Big Dipper Divine Fist. Xiaohua landed below the bone-honing Xiaohua. While releasing the starry sky fluctuations, he also danced with the Big Dipper God Fist. When the thunder origin entered his body, Xiaohua's body immediately felt like it was being smashed by a heavy hammer. His entire body was smashed apart inch by inch, and then fused back together inch by inch. This was even more painful than the first time he introduced the fire origin. Chapter 4263. Xiaohua's days felt like years. He did not dare to faint casually, nor did he dare to let go of any trace of understanding. After all, the power of thunder was the most important of all the spells that he practiced. His understanding of the thunder vanquishing bead was still shallow. In the face of this thunder origin, he could only treat the feeling of not being able to live or die as an experience. However, when the thunder origin fell into the space, Xiaohua's heart clenched again. His mind followed the thunder origin into the space, and an inexplicable premonition was born from the bottom of his heart. Rumble! The thunder origin fell into the starry sky, and the entire space was suffused with purple. At the same time, the green that had not completely disappeared before mixed with the purple. Immediately, there was a change that Jade Archive Xiaohua did not expect. The previously blurred and distorted space was now being stretched by the power of wind and thunder. When the light and shadow stretched to a certain extent, the light and shadow rapidly shrank and returned to its original state in a moment. The power of wind and thunder seemed to have unloaded a heavy burden, and it continued to stretch until the entire space was stretched into another Shenhua continent. However, the Shenhua continent in this space was much smaller than the previous Shenhua continent, and everything inside was somewhat similar to what Jade Archive Xiaohua felt before. Everything inside felt blurry and unreal. What's going on? Jade Archive Xiaohua was dumbfounded. He saw that the space had actually given birth to another space. Waves of strange fluctuations rushed from the space into his mind, and a feeling of being at a loss arose spontaneously. When the strange fluctuations entered his body, Jade Archive Xiaohua's eyes lit up. He hurriedly closed his eyes and sat cross-legged with his palms facing the sky, carefully perceiving the fluctuations. While Xiaohua was comprehending the fluctuations, the changes in the entire space continued to develop. Besides this small space, 6 different spaces appeared around the Shenhua continent. These spaces were somewhat similar to the small space from before, but their sizes were different, and the colors of the spaces within were different as well. So much so that if the Jade Archive Xiaohua opened his eyes, he would be able to see that the outer layers of these 7 spaces were all wrapped in a hazy luster, just like each and every one of the mysterious stars. Finally, a golden light flew up from Shenhua continent and landed on all the spaces. Only then did the shaking of the entire space stop. The entire space fell into a state of absolute stillness. The vibrations that came with the appearance of each space also stopped abruptly. The moment the spatial vibrations stopped, many star-like brilliances appeared in the adjacent spaces. These brilliances were somewhat dim and not particularly vivid. The changes in the space had ended, but the changes in the Shenhua continent had not. Many treasures and rare items had broken free from Xiaohua's shackles. After disappearing in an extremely strange manner, they reappeared in different spaces. There were even many Fortune Gate disciples who had disappeared several times on the spot before slowly returning to their original state. However, this kind of change was caused by the will of heaven and earth. Everything in the space was in a state of stillness. The Fortune Gate disciples were unaware of this, and even Xiaohua, who was meditating with his eyes closed, was unaware of this. As for the strange beasts and rare items that Xiaohua had collected into his space, they had all fallen into the void along with the golden light. After an unknown amount of time, Xiaohua's eyelids moved and he opened his eyes. The moment his eyelids moved, the stillness of the entire space was broken, and everything began to move again. Xiaohua was no longer on the original Shenhua continent. Instead, he was in a kind of void. He looked at the darkness around him, then at the space where Shenhua continent was, and then at the other spaces that had just appeared. He sighed and said, "Space, ah space. The so-called space naturally has emptiness first, then space. The 5 elements of heaven and earth are emptiness, and the power of wind and thunder is space. Only spaces with complete origin force can be considered real spaces." As he spoke, Jade Archive Xiaohua gently waved his hand, and countless tiny spaces appeared in the void. With another wave of his hand, these tiny spaces were completely annihilated, and a terrifying destructive force was born from the birth and destruction of these spaces. This is the true power of space. Only by controlling the power of heaven and earth can one have such destructive power. Xiaohua said with a wry smile. What is I's cultivation level now? What's the use of knowing these profound truths of heaven and earth? Jade Archive Xiaohua's gaze swept across the various spaces again. He already understood everything inside. Finally, his gaze fell on Xiaohua of the heavenly Tao in the endless void. Previously, in the space where Shenhua continent was, Xiaohua of the heavenly Tao had taken shelter in the starry sky. Now, Xiaohua of the heavenly Tao had escaped from the starry sky of that space and landed in the endless void. His figure became increasingly ethereal and larger. Similarly, in the void, Xiaohua of the Karma Hand had covered several spaces, and the Karma Hand was incomparably large. Everything will change, and everything will develop. Xiaohua smiled faintly, and his figure landed in the space where Shenhua continent was. He thought to himself, previously, I thought that this was how the space was. But who would have thought that there would be such a change today? Heavenly Tao. Oh Heavenly Tao, when will it end? Oh. While flying, Xiaohua of the Heavenly Tao raised his eyebrows, and his figure stopped in midair. He looked at a star halo in the distance. The Heavenly Devil of Freedom was actually reborn in that unformed space? Oh my, even the Heavenly Devil of Joy was there? Sure enough, this devil can't be eliminated unless there is no more life in this world. However, the place where the Heavenly Devil of Freedom and the Heavenly Devil of Joy are, is it the Devil Nation? Why hasn't that place formed yet? I don't care. With these two heavenly devils in I's space, the Fortune Gate's disciples can also pass the devil tribulation. Their cultivation is the real cultivation. I don't believe that the disciples who passed the heavenly devil's test can't be compared to the disciples of the hidden immortal continent, or even the Dawn Rain continent. As Xiaohua of the heavenly Tao was thinking, the green-robed Xiaohua's figure appeared in the space where Shenhua continent was. The moment the green-robed Xiaohua appeared, he looked at the newly formed space in surprise, as if he had already sensed it. Oh, interesting. Seeing this, Xiaohua of the heavenly Tao appeared beside the green-robed Xiaohua in a flash. He smiled and asked, "Why did fellow Taoist come in?" Fellow Taoist. The green-robed Xiaohua ignored Xiaohua's question. Instead, he continued to look in the direction of the space and asked curiously, "What's going on? I didn't feel anything when I entered the space just now. Why did I find a place that made me feel a strange connection when I came in this time?" "Oh, what strange connection did you discover with the place outside this space?" Xiaohua of the heavenly Tao asked calmly. The green-robed Xiaohua closed his eyes and pondered for a moment. Then he said word by word, "I can't explain this connection. However, I feel that other than this Shenhua continent, there should be another place that I can go. It's like a home. Fellow Taoist, what's going on?" Fellow Taoist, if I can say, I will naturally say it. I feel that it's not too late to say it when you discover it. Xiaohua of the heavenly Tao replied mysteriously. The green-robed Xiaohua smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist, it's up to you to say it." At this moment, the green-robed Xiaohua raised his eyebrows again. With a wave of his hand, Xiaogua appeared beside the two. Xiaogua looked at the two dumbfounded. She didn't understand why two masters suddenly appeared. "What's going on, Xiaogua?" the green-robed Xiaohua asked. When Xiaogua heard this, she immediately bowed and said while crying, "Master, please know that our house has been robbed. Suddenly, a lot of spiritual herbs have been stolen." Ah! When the green-robed Xiaohua heard this, he hurriedly looked at the herb field, and then looked at the place he was worried about. Sure enough, his expression changed greatly. He looked at Xiaohua of the heavenly Tao with bright eyes and said, "Fellow Taoist, is there really a thief? Is it those heavenly demons?" Don't worry." Xiaohua of the heavenly Tao smiled, and said to the green-robed Xiaohua and Xiaogua, "There are some changes in Shenhua continent. This is normal. Everything is under I's control." "Master." Xiaogua looked at the green-robed Xiaohua with doubt. "And whatever master says." The green-robed Xiaohua felt very bored and waved his hand. "Just do your own thing. Go Xiaogua." Xiaohua stretched out his hand and patted Xiaogua's head a few times. "You did very well. Master saw everything." "Yes, master." Xiaogua still couldn't tell which one was the real master. She simply bowed to the two of them and left. "Let's go. Fellow Taoists must be waiting anxiously." Xiaohua of the heavenly Tao waved his hand and called the green-robed Xiaohua out. "What's the hurry? We just came in." The green-robed Xiaohua muttered and flew out of the space with Xiaohua of the heavenly Tao. However, at this moment he stroked his chin and said, "Right, there are some changes in the space. When we came in it was a bit difficult. Did you do something?" Xiaohua smiled and didn't say anything. He had already sensed what the green-robed Xiaohua said. The boundary of the space now was completely different from before. It was the endless void that was in contact with the outside world. It wasn't the original space that was directly in contact with the outside world. Even if a powerful expert discovered his own space, they could only enter the void first before discovering other spaces. Of course, the current Xiaohua couldn't completely understand the connection between the spaces. Xiaohua's mind returned to its original position. The group of doppelgangers looked at Xiaohua and waited for his analysis. They seemed to have seen something from the green-robed Xiaohua's excited face. Xiaohua smiled and said, "It's a long story. If fellow Taoists are interested, you can go and see for yourselves after leaving the imperial palace." At this point, Xiaohua glanced at the dragon vein Xiaohua and said thoughtfully, "If I guess correctly, fellow Taoist Longmai should be able to enter Xinhua continent this time." Chapter 4264. "Oh ho!" Xiaohua of the dragon vein shouted. He raised his head and let out a dragon roar above the heaven and earth pagoda. He seemed very happy. Then, without waiting for Xiaohua to say anything, he immediately shouted, "Fellow Taoist, this poor Taoist can't wait any longer. Can this poor Taoist go in and take a look?" Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and looked at the blooming chrysanthemum. He nodded and said, "The fourth floor of the heaven and earth pagoda should contain the water source that we urgently need. With the help of wind and lightning sources, it should be able to produce more innate heavy water. If we can obtain the water source, then the Xinhua continent will have all 5 elements. Who knows what changes will happen to the space? Forget it, fellow Taoist Longmai, you can try to enter." "Good." Dragon vein Xiaohua praised. His figure swayed and rushed into the space, while Xiaohua's mind entered first. Sure enough, as Xiaohua expected this time, Xiaohua entered the space very smoothly. However, to Xiaohua's surprise, Xiaohua didn't enter the Xinhua continent. Instead, he fell into another space above the Xinhua continent. What's going on?" Jade Archive Xiaohua was shocked. His figure flickered, and he appeared above the continent. "Fellow Taoist, this the Xinhua continent." Dragon vein Xiaohua was surprised to see such a barren space filled with rich origin energy. Where did our Fortune Gate's disciples go? Jade Archive Xiaohua looked at Dragon vein Xiaohua, and then at the space around him. He already understood that Dragon vein Xiaohua was formed from the dragon cleansing liquid, which was an item from the dragon domain. Therefore, Dragon vein Xiaohua's body was of a higher grade than ordinary dragons. He might be able to exist in a space like the hidden immortal continent, but he could not enter an incomplete space like the Xinhua continent. Now that Xiaohua's space had merged with the wind and lightning sources, there was a level to it. This space might be a higher grade space that could accommodate Dragon vein Xiaohua. Similarly, the space that green-robed Xiaohua had sensed on the Xinhua continent was also a higher grade space. "Feel it again," Xiaohua suggested. "See if you can sense other spaces." "Other spaces?" Dragon vein Xiaohua was stunned and said in surprise, "Fellow Taoist, how many spaces are there here? Isn't there only one Xinhua continent?" "Naturally, there wasn't any in the past. But from today onwards there will be," Xiaohua replied with a smile. "Haha, congratulations fellow Taoist, congratulations fellow Taoist." Dragon vein Xiaohua immediately understood and cupped his hands with a smile. The Jade Archive Xiaohua returned the greeting. "Congratulations to you, congratulations to you." Then, Xiaohua followed Xiaohua's instructions and carefully sensed his surroundings. Before long, he found the aura of the space where Xinhua continent was located. In the past, Xiaohua had been able to sense the Xinhua continent, but he had not been able to enter. Now that he had sensed it and activated his dragon qi, he was actually able to enter. However, it consumed a lot of dragon qi, and the space that came into contact with the Xinhua continent showed signs of collapsing. Because of this, Xiaohua didn't dare to stay for too long. After looking around a bit, he hurriedly left. "How is it?" The moment the green-robed Xiaohua saw Dragon vein Xiaohua come out, he immediately asked. "Avakania, Avakania." Xiaohua of the dragon bloodline was actually keeping them in suspense. Xiaohua smiled faintly and simply passed on some of his insights into the advancement of space to these clones. "It can't be." When the clones sensed what Xiaohua said, they were all stunned. After a moment, They were all beaming with joy. Our luck is actually so good. Previously we shared a space, but now each of our clones has a space? Xiaohua nodded and said, if nothing unexpected happens, it should be so. However, if you want to enter your own space, fellow Taoists, you all need to continue to work hard. Good. We understand. The clones replied in unison. Xiaohua and the other clones calmed down and said to the scholarly cultivator Xiaohua, scholarly fellow Taoist, you can release the water origin now. Okay. The scholarly cultivator Xiaohua responded and activated the heaven and earth pagoda again, releasing the 4th level of the pagoda. After a graceful peony flower bloomed, wisps of green gas flew out from the peony flower and floated towards the surrounding space. Tai Wei green light? The scholarly cultivator Xiaohua was extremely familiar with this green light and immediately cried out, This is an innate jellyfish. When the clones heard this, they immediately looked towards the peony flower. Sure enough, a ball of water blue-green light was emitting brilliance from within, and endless amounts of Tai Wei green light fell into the 3rd level of the pagoda. Although an innate jellyfish was also an extremely rare thing in the world, Xiaohua's eyes clearly showed extreme disappointment. Compared to the water origin, the innate jellyfish was still too far away. Granny, I understand now. The green-robed Xiaohua cried out like a prophet. That heavenly demon didn't have the water origin in his hands, so he borrowed the power of wind and thunder to produce something similar to the water origin. Then, he used the innate jellyfish to turn this thing similar to the water origin into Tai Wei green light, and sent it into the Great Formation. At this point, the green-robed Xiaohua stopped because the Grand Light Azure Light was the Grand Light Azure Light, and not the Connate Heavy Water. The Grand Light Azure Light could kill, but it couldn't create a flood like the Connate Heavy Water. The green-robed Xiaohua couldn't guess what was inside the 3rd level of the pagoda that could turn Tai Wei green light into innate true water. Xiaohua had used his mind to collect the innate jellyfish before, so it wasn't too difficult for him to do so now. However, this innate jellyfish clearly contained too much power of wind and thunder, and too much Tai Wei green light. It was abnormally heavy, so Xiaohua had to spend a lot of effort to collect it. The green-robed Xiaohua watched Xiaohua collect the innate jellyfish. His eyes turned a few times, and he asked, fellow Taoist, our 5 elements wishful sky cudgel needs the innate mother of nature. Previously, we used the innate jellyfish and innate fire origin. So which one do we lack now? We still lack the innate mother of nature, and the metal and wood elemental magnetism. Xiaohua answered without hesitation. These 2 things are still unknown. Previously, Xin gave us the information about the location of the wood and water elemental magnetism, but we already obtained it in the ruins, so we don't need to go there anymore. And the water origin, the bone-honing Xiaohua reminded again. Without the water origin, fellow Taoists can't cultivate the light escape technique. Xiaohua smiled bitterly and said, the things we need for cultivation are all rare treasures in the world. Even the immortals of the immortal world would covet them. Fortunately, our luck is not bad, and we were able to wander to the upper realms like the ruins and the Great Desolation Continent. Otherwise, who knows when we would be able to gather all these things. As for the things we lack, we don't need to worry. We can slowly look for them. Good. The bone-honing Xiaohua obtained 3 origins at once, but he couldn't refine them in a short time. At this time, he naturally didn't have any objections and was the first to applaud. Fellow Taoist, continue to open it. Xiaohua instructed the scholarly cultivator Xiaohua. I am already very curious. What exactly is inside the 3rd layer? To actually be able to turn the Tai Wei green light into the innate heavy water. Not only was Xiaohua curious, even the scholarly cultivator Xiaohua was also curious. However, when the 3rd layer of the pagoda turned into a blood-red azalea flower and bloomed, everyone couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air when they saw the thing inside the azalea flower. Because inside the azalea flower, there was a complete set of golden dragon bones curled up, and an aura that made everyone prostrate themselves and worship overflowed from it. It forced everyone to retreat, and they couldn't even stand steadily in the air. And that almost endless amount of Tai Wei green light fell into the dragon mouth of this golden dragon bones, and flowed out from the tail of the dragon bones. That gugugu sound of flowing into the second layer of the pagoda was precisely the innate heavy water. Close it first. Even Xiaohua was unable to resist the dragon aura from the dragon bones. He descended from the sky and hurriedly ordered the scholarly cultivator Xiaohua. However, when the scholarly cultivator Xiaohua urged the heaven and earth pagoda to close the azalea flower, he discovered that he was unable to suppress the soaring dragon aura, and thus was unable to close the azalea flower. Damn it, this Hua Le Heaven demon is definitely a genius. At this time, the green-robed Xiaohua somewhat admired the Hua Le Heaven demon. He was actually able to use the characteristics of these heaven and earth treasures to arrange a great formation, and forcibly create something out of nothing to make the innate heavy water appear. Now that we have slightly damaged it, it can't be restored to its original state. Since the heaven and earth pagoda had already been opened, the dragon aura from the dragon bones above the dragon god became more and more penetrating, gradually forming a dragon shape above the heaven and earth pagoda. And as this dragon shape became more and more plentiful, Xiaohua and the others became more and more unable to stay for long, as if they would have to kneel before this dragon shape at any time. Ayo! At this time, Dragon Vein Xiaohua exclaimed, This seems to be Ao Sheng. What? Ao Sheng? Xiaohua stared blankly, trying his best to look at that blurry dragon shape, but it was useless. In his eyes, Ao Sheng was no different from Ao Jia and Aoe. Only Dragon Vein Xiaohua's dragon body and Little White's dragon body could be distinguished. Who cares if it's Ao Sheng or not? The golden light above the dragon bones was truly dazzling, and even through this dragon shape, it still pierced Xiaohua's eyes, causing him to feel extremely uncomfortable. He angrily said, If fellow Taoist has the means, why don't you hurry up and take this dragon bone? But if I take it, I won't be able to return it to Ao Sheng. Dragon Vein Xiaohua was somewhat hesitant. I can't be compared to Master Bodhi. I can only beat dogs with meat buns. Bullshit, Xiaohua angrily said. How can Ao Sheng, this little brat, be compared to Luer? Hurry up and take this dragon bone. We won't leave a single hair for Dragon Island. Alright, then I will give it a try. I don't have much confidence. Dragon Vein Xiaohua hesitated for a moment, then said to Confucian cultivator Xiaohua, who was also somewhat numb, Fellow Taoist, help me. Alright. Confucian cultivator Xiaohua nodded, and according to Dragon Vein Xiaohua's message, he did his best to close the azalea flower a little. When the azalea flower moved, Dragon Vein Xiaohua also let out a long roar, releasing his dragon body, and landing on the azalea flower in the same position as the dragon god's dragon bone. Then, he inserted the dragon horn on his head into the gap of the azalea flower. Chapter 4265. Wang Wang. The entire dragon horn let out a rumbling sound, and the countless dragon patterns on it fell into the azalea flower along with the dragon horn. The entire azalea flower also shook, and as the dragon patterns overflowed, the entire azalea flower also turned into a dragon shape. Pa pa pa. In just a moment, there was another burst of explosive sounds, and like bamboo being thrown into a fire pit, many dragon patterns flew out from the cracks of the azalea flower. Fellow Taoist, Dragon Vein Xiaohua suddenly shouted, Lend I 9 drops of essence blood. Ah, 9 drops? Xiaohua opened his mouth in shock. Don't tell me you want I's life. Fellow Taoist, this is the dragon bone of the dragon god. Dragon Vein Xiaohua's extremely tempting voice came. If you pass this village, you won't have this shop anymore. Today, fellow Taoist is unwilling to part with 9 drops of essence blood. But in the future, even if you have 90 drops of essence blood, you won't be able to find the dragon bone of the dragon god. Okay. Xiaohua clenched his teeth and agreed. When the 9 drops of essence blood fell into the azalea flower, Xiaohua's face turned pale, and he almost couldn't stand in the air. Boom! A huge rumbling sound came from the azalea flower, and the dragon shape in the air turned blood red. Now is the time! Dragon Vein Xiaohua roared, his body shrunk, and rushed into the azalea flower. However, in just a moment, the dragon breath that rushed into the sky slowly dissipated and fell into the azalea flower again. Roar! Dragon Vane Xiaohua flew out from the azalea flower. His body was covered in golden light, and an uncontrollable dragon might rushed out of his body. Fellow Taoist, Dragon Vane Xiaohua seemed to be unable to control his body, and he shouted, I can't continue to help fellow Taoist here. I want to enter the Shenhua continent to rest. Okay, you can go, Xiaohua said, and released his consciousness to put Dragon Vane Xiaohua into the space. Once Dragon Vane Xiaohua left, the entire space immediately returned to its original state, and the clones all let out a long breath. Fellow Taoist, can you control this nation treasure? Xiaohua squinted his eyes and looked at the mountain river seal and asked Confucian cultivator Xiaohua. Confucian cultivator Xiaohua smiled. This nation treasure originally belonged to my Confucian imperial power. Of course I can control it. Needless to say, the heaven and earth pagoda is now under my control. As he spoke, the Confucian cultivator Xiaohua spat out a mouthful of true qi to stabilize the mountain and river seal. He looked at the innate heavy water that had already disappeared from the third layer of the pagoda and said, taking away the dragon bone is already taking drastic measures. This great array no longer has an endless supply of innate heavy water. The catastrophe of the great desolate continent should have already been resolved. As for the second level of the heaven and earth pagoda, there's no need to guess. It can only be the innate heavy water. Is there even a need to guess? The green-robed Xiaohua snorted and said, anyone with eyes could see the innate heavy water flowing into the second level of the heaven and earth pagoda. Now what we need to guess is, what is being suppressed at the bottom of the heaven and earth pagoda? This, the scholarly cultivator Xiaohua thought for a moment and shook his head. I can't guess. Let's take a look first. Xiaohua frowned and instructed. The scholarly cultivator Xiaohua opened the second layer of the pagoda. Indeed, after a huge osmanthus flower bloomed, the entire second layer of azure water waves appeared. Looking at the endless azure water waves, Buddha Bodhi mercifully shook his head and said, Namo Maitreya Buddha. If this innate heavy water fell into the great desolate continent, wouldn't it destroy the entire great desolate continent? Keep it. Xiaohua looked around and saw that there were still many whirlpools appearing from time to time. He understood that the great desolate continent was still raining cats and dogs. He instructed Bodhi, the longer it stays, the more lives will be harmed. Bodhi smiled bitterly and said, this little monk's water bottle is already full of innate heavy water. I can't keep it anymore. This innate heavy water should be kept in the Shenhua continent by Tanyue. No, the green-robed Xiaohua hurriedly shouted. So much innate primordial water. The entire Shenhua continent can't contain it. Could it be that Master wants to flood the Shenhua continent? Bodhi was also in a difficult position. He looked at Xiaohua and said, Tanyue can seal it in a place, right? Haha, there's no need for you to think too much. Xiaohua's eyes lit up. He thought of the space where Dragon Vane Xiaohua was at now. That place was merely barren. There was no sea or ocean. Wasn't this innate heavy water exactly what that space needed? As for the harm this innate heavy water would do to the dragon race, Dragon Vane Xiaohua would definitely not sit by and do nothing. He would definitely refine this innate heavy water into ordinary water. As he spoke, Xiaohua released his consciousness and began to collect the innate heavy water. The green-robed Xiaohua was still worried. He entered the space to check. When he didn't see any water droplets entering the Shenhua continent, he raised his head to look at the sky. He seemed to have thought of something. Taoist. Seeing Xiaohua use his divine ability to collect the innate heavy water, Sky Devouring, who was watching from afar, couldn't help but fly closer. It knelt in midair and kowtowed. This little one represents the strange beasts of the great desolate continent to thank Taoist Jinhun. If this little one has offended you in any way, please forgive me. Get up. Xiaohua flicked his sleeves and helped Sky Devouring up. He smiled and said, previously, you and I didn't understand each other. The so-called offending has already become a thing of the past. Yes, Taoist Jinhun. Sky Devouring stood up with Xiaohua's help and respectfully stood at the side. Its attitude was completely different from before. Xiaohua was busy for less than an hour. The amount of innate heavy water in the osmanthus flower didn't seem to have decreased by much. Xiaohua smiled bitterly and raised his head to ask, "Scholarly cultivator, you can already control the heaven and earth pagoda. Can you directly send this innate heavy water to the Shenhua continent?" "This little one has yet to completely control the heaven and earth pagoda," scholarly cultivator Xiaohua replied. "Moreover, this little one has already tried. There is simply too much innate heavy water. This little one is unable to activate the heaven and earth pagoda. All of you come." Xiaohua smiled bitterly. "If I only rely on myself, I don't know when I'll be able to collect it." Hehe. The green-robed Xiaohua laughed. He waved his hand and took out the Kunlun mirror. He said, "We also don't have enough. Why don't we let the Fortune Gate's disciples come out and help?" "Great." Xiaohua clapped his hands and laughed. "I am used to fighting alone and have always neglected the strength of the Fortune Gate's disciples." Then, the green-robed Xiaohua handed the Kunlun mirror to Xiaohua. Xiaohua casually glanced at Sky Devouring, who was standing respectfully not far away. He took the Kunlun mirror and activated it, releasing the Fortune Gate's disciples one by one. The strength of the Fortune Gate's disciples couldn't be underestimated. They might not be able to escape the calamity of the desolate continent, but it wasn't a problem to get them to help collect the innate heavy water. Especially the Lu family's disciples. When they saw that they could do something for Xiaohua, they all activated the divine ability of the Dragon Clan's descendants and collected the innate heavy water, as if they were showing off. After Fujiwen and the others saw Xiaohua, they directed their disciples to various parts of the heaven and earth pagoda to collect the innate heavy water. When they finished distributing, they simply returned to Xiaohua's side. Xiaohua was quite happy to see that his disciples had become useful. However, when he glanced at Fujiwen, he seemed to have thought of something and frowned. He sent a voice transmission to Xiaohua, but Xiaohua merely shrugged and shook his head. Although there were many Fortune Gate's disciples, there was too much innate heavy water in the heaven and earth pagoda. With so many disciples, it took more than a month to collect all the innate heavy water in the heaven and earth pagoda's second floor. Seeing that the innate heavy water was gradually drying up, a magic formation set up in the void appeared at the point where the second and first levels of the heaven and earth pagoda came into contact. This magic formation exuded a kind of dragon's might, and the faint dragon patterns were mixed with some Buddhist light. Xiaohua's divine thoughts revealed a wave that he was familiar with. Wasn't this the firmament formation that Xiaohua had seen on the heaven-connecting peak that day? Phew! Only now did Xiaohua's heart completely calm down. He understood that this great formation was most likely the dragon formation that the dragon god knew about. He might not be able to break it with his strength. However, he had already taken away the innate heavy water. Even if this great formation was not broken, the apocalyptic disaster of the untainted land would become a thing of the past. After the innate heavy water dried up, the heaven and earth pagoda's final floor was revealed. After Xiaohua sent the Fortune Gate's disciples back to the Shenhua continent, he stroked his chin and looked at the heaven and earth pagoda's body. "Fellow immortal," Xiaohua reminded, "the desolate continent's calamity has been eliminated. Now the heaven and earth pagoda's final floor can be opened or not. What is fellow immortal's choice?" "What if I open it?" Xiaohua asked with interest. "It's very simple." The Confucian cultivator Xiaohua laughed. "There is no such thing as perfection in this world. We have already done everything we could. We have also obtained the treasures we should have obtained. It is actually best for us to stop now. If I am not wrong, the heaven and earth pagoda's final floor should be sealing the heaven and earth pagoda's guardian. This thing could be a heavenly demon or some other demonic creature. If there is another heavenly demon on the desolate continent besides the heavenly demon, then this heavenly demon must be in the heaven and earth pagoda's final floor. If we open this floor, it might be released. If we can't subdue it, then I don't need to say more about the outcome." Hehe. Xiaohua laughed and replied, "In that case, why should we open it? Fellow immortal, you can put away this heaven and earth pagoda, and we will leave the imperial heaven court." "What a pity!" Xiao Hua's face was full of regret as he replied, I have already said that there is nothing perfect in this world. There is a guardian in this heaven and earth pagoda, so I cannot take it away. Therefore, if we want to leave, we will have to abandon this heaven and earth pagoda. Moreover, this heaven and earth pagoda is the eye of the heavenly dome formation. If we don't take it away, this heavenly dome formation will always be there. Even, the green-robed Xiao Hua's face changed. We can't even leave, right? That's right. There is such a possibility. Xiao Hua nodded solemnly. After all, this great formation covers the entire desolate continent. Our teleportation array is also within this great formation. Chapter 4266. Xiao Hua rolled his eyes and suddenly turned to ask Sky Swallowing Beast. Sky Swallowing Beast, do you think I should open it or not? No. Sky Swallowing Beast replied without hesitation. Xiao Hua asked with a smile, why? Sky Swallowing Beast stared blankly and hurriedly explained. Disciple feels that there are so many powerful things in the pagoda. Those that can be used to guard the pagoda must be even more powerful than these things. Now that the disaster of the primitive continent has been resolved, why should we look for trouble? It's just like when this lowly one found a mud-curved beast to eat. I ate its body, but I had to discard the poisonous beast's head in the end. Otherwise, not only would I have to vomit out the body, even my own life would be in danger. You foodie, you only know how to eat. Xiao Hua laughed and scolded him. He turned to the green-robed Xiao Hua and Buddha Bodhi and said, Fellow Taoists, be on guard. If there is anything strange, feel free to attack. Fellow Taoist Confucian cultivator, prepare to open the last floor. Oh, okay. Seeing that Xiao Hua didn't listen to his advice and wanted to open the last floor, Xiao Hua was also helpless and prepared to open the last floor. Wait a moment. At this moment, Xiao Hua suddenly spoke again. He looked left and right and flew up, forming a triangle with the green-robed Xiao Hua and Buddha Bodhi. Finally, he didn't forget to tell Sky Swallowing Beast behind him. Sky Swallowing Beast, be careful. If there really is another heavenly demon, I won't be able to protect you. Sky Swallowing Beast vigorously nodded and asked in a low voice. Taoist, can I not open the last floor? Of course not. Xiao Hua replied and raised his hands, holding the seal of turning the sea in his hands. He was very alert. When the green-robed Xiao Hua held the Tungjiao shears in his hand, Buddha Bodhi struggled to lift the tree of 7 wonders. Confucian cultivator Xiao Hua glanced at Xiao Hua and activated the heaven and earth pagoda, opening the last layer of the pagoda. The purple datura flower bloomed strangely, and a gust of ghostly aura mixed with the aura of the netherworld rushed out of the datura flower. Within the ghostly aura, countless ghosts roared and wanted to rush out. Ha ha ha. Xiao Hua laughs and proudly says to Buddha Bodhi, Did you see that? This is I's wise decision. Back then, I had seen the souls of strange beasts from the primitive continent flashing in the innate heavy water before disappearing. You all said that you had never seen it before. Look, it's not that you didn't see it before. It's just that it was absorbed into the heavenly demon's heavenly dome formation. Now these ghosts belong to the master. As long as the master purifies these ghosts, who would dare to not give the Buddha fruit to the master? Buddha Bodhi smiled and floated down from the sky. His face flickered from time to time, either Jiang Luo or Xiao Hua. He said mercifully, Namo Mithriya Buddha, Tanyue is right. As long as I obtain so much merit, not to mention the reincarnation of Namo Mithriya Buddha, even the reincarnation of Mahavairocana, will not be able to snatch the Buddha fruit from me. Congratulations, great master. Congratulations, great master. Today, you have finally achieved your goal. The green-robed Xiao Hua also cupped his hands and congratulated him. Ha ha ha, congratulations to you, congratulations to you. Buddha Bodhi laughed heartily. This is the Buddha fruit of my Namo Mithriya Buddha. As long as I'm still alive, I will never let anyone snatch this Buddha fruit. Suddenly, a somewhat timid but abnormally resolute voice rang out from behind Xiao Hua. Immediately after, a heaven and earth pagoda that was several feet tall appeared behind Xiao Hua. As soon as the heaven and earth pagoda appeared, the second layer of the pagoda was immediately controlled by it. Xiaohua was shocked and hurriedly urged his Dharma power. However, the whole pagoda was imprisoned and his Dharma power could not be urged at all. Not to mention Xiaohua. Even the green-robed Xiaohua and Buddha Bodhi were sealed in midair and could not move at all. Sky swallowing? Are you crazy? Xiaohua was on top of the heaven and earth pagoda, seeing the pagoda that he had mentioned before appear, and that it was actually in Sky Swallowing's hands. He immediately cried out in surprise, and tried his best to urge the heaven and earth pagoda. Unfortunately, although the heaven and earth pagoda made a rumbling sound, the second layer of the pagoda did not change at all. Spiritual Master Xiao. Sky Swallowing saw that he had the situation under control, and did not dare to be negligent. He cried out, "I didn't do it on purpose. This is you who forced me." As he spoke, Sky Swallowing opened his mouth. Woo! A golden dragon flew out from his stomach and fell into the heaven and earth pagoda. Dragon crystal? You actually have the dragon crystal of the dragon god? Xiaohua was shocked. At this point, how could he not know what Sky Swallowing was going to do? Buzz! The moment the dragon crystal fell into the heaven and earth pagoda, the whole pagoda immediately made a rumbling sound. Then, the pagoda turned into a huge dragon. This dragon was exactly the same as Ao Sheng, but this Ao Sheng's face was ferocious. The dragon horn on his head flashed a cold light. That overwhelming dragon power filled the second layer of the heaven and earth pagoda, firmly covering Xiaohua, the green-robed Xiaohua, and Bodhi. Then the dragon-shaped Ao Sheng gave a strange smile. On his face, there was a smile that was similar to the smile of the heavenly demon. He crazily pounced on Xiaohua's back. Boom! Xiaohua's back shone with a myriad of light like the rising sun. He wanted to resist the attack of the dragon-shaped pagoda, but this light was instantly annihilated by the dragon horn. Even Xiaohua's body was crushed like paper under the power of the dragon crystal and the heaven and earth pagoda, turning into thousands of fragments that scattered in the air. With the fall of Xiaohua, the green-robed Xiaohua and Bodhi's faces changed greatly. Their bodies shook a few times and turned into flowing light, rushing into the blooming purple datura flower in the heaven and earth pagoda. Damn it! Xiaohua cursed. He was about to escape, but after flying for a moment, he also turned into a ray of light and fell into the datura flower. Alas! Seeing that Xiaohua had fallen and all his doppelgangers were killed by him, Sky Swallowing's face turned pale. He raised his head to look at the empty second layer of the heaven and earth pagoda. Then he looked at the heaven and earth pagoda that had turned into a dragon. He sighed and knelt down at the place where Xiaohua had fallen. He kowtowed to the flesh and blood and said, "Spiritual Master, this little one knows that you have done a lot to save the billions of creatures in the Eldritch continent. You are the savior of all the creatures in the Eldritch continent. Moreover, you have been really good to this little one. This little one really likes the weapon you have given to this little one. If you had not uncovered the last layer of the pagoda, this little one would definitely not have made a move. However, since you've decided to unveil the pagoda and fight for merits with Namo Methriya Buddha, destroying his path of survival, today, for the sake of Namo Methriya Buddha, I have no choice but to launch a sneak attack on Enlightened Master. This little one will pay for Spiritual Master's life. I will use the weapon Spiritual Master gave to this little one to end my life. I hope that after this little one reincarnates, I can be Spiritual Master's mount to repay Spiritual Master's kindness." As he spoke, Sky Swallowing raised his hand and picked up the nine-toothed rake. He closed his eyes and clenched his teeth, as if he was extremely afraid of pain, and hit himself on the top of his head. However, what was extremely strange was that the nine-toothed rake seemed to be illusory. When it hit Sky Swallowing's head, it simply flashed past. What is going on? Sky Swallowing opened his eyes and looked at the nine-toothed rake in his hand in bewilderment. He then touched his head and asked curiously, "Am I already dead? Didn't I hear that death is very painful?" As he said that, he hugged her a few more times with the back of his hand. "And it seems that you are really dead. If that is the case, then I have not let Spiritual Master Xiao down." Sky Swallowing's pale face showed a trace of relaxation and a smile. Ha ha ha. Suddenly, A kind of laughter rang out in the previously silent heaven and earth pagoda. Sky Swallowing turned pale with fright. He raised his head and saw that not only was Xiaohua's figure facing him in perfect condition, but there was also a trace of a smile on his face. Even the green-robed Xiaohua, Buddha Bodhi, and Confucian cultivator Xiaohua were standing in their original places without any injuries at all. You. Sky Swallowing was puzzled. He then realized and said with a smile, "So you have also arrived here a step earlier." Then he knelt in front of Xiaohua and kowtowed. "Spiritual master, don't blame this little one for being ruthless. It is only because this little one has been under Buddha Maitreya since young. He often taught this little one. And this little one is willing to do anything for Buddha Maitreya. The last floor of this heaven and earth pagoda is the last guarantee for Buddha Maitreya's enlightenment. If spiritual master took them away, Buddha Maitreya would really have no way to live, so this little one could only take action." And, hearing this, Xiaohua looked at Sky Swallowing with a smile that was not a smile and said, "In that case, this old man has slightly forgiven you. This little one does not care. I beg for spiritual master's forgiveness." Sky Swallowing did not dare to get up and said sincerely, "This little one only hopes to be spiritual master's mount after reincarnation to atone for the sins of my previous life." Xiaohua looked at Sky Swallowing thoughtfully and asked, "Who gave you the dragon crystal that you used to attack this old man? Let this old man see." This little one found that in Chao Tian Imperial Court. Sky Swallowing raised his head and answered honestly, "And that small pagoda? That thing has already been left in Chao Tian Imperial Court. How can this little one take it out?" "You can try. It is said that the dragon crystal of the dragon god can be reincarnated with the soul," Xiaohua said. "Okay." Sky Swallowing opened his mouth. Wung. The dragon crystal was spat out from his mouth again. As soon as the dragon crystal entered the air, it immediately emitted a golden brilliance. This brilliance was once again in the shape of Ao Sheng's dragon. This. Seeing the dragon crystal like this, Sky Swallowing's face suddenly revealed a kind of surprise. He was actually not stupid, nor was he stupid. It was just that because he attacked Xiaohua earlier, his conscience was quite guilty. Moreover, when Xiaohua suddenly appeared, he felt a kind of shame that he did not have the face-to-face, so he lost his mind. At this moment, seeing the dragon crystal as dazzling as before, he immediately came to his senses. However, just as he came to his senses, he heard a dragon roar. Then he saw an even more dazzling golden light flash by, and then a soaring dragon breath flashed in front of his eyes. The entire world returned to its calm state, and the dragon crystal in front of him had long disappeared. Chapter 4267. That's not right. Seeing this, heaven-devouring beast immediately jumped up from the ground and exclaimed, This isn't the netherworld. Haha. At this time, a voice sounded behind heaven-devouring beast. Of course this isn't the netherworld. This is just an illusion to test you. Heaven-devouring beast turned around in shock. Soul cultivator Xiaohua was standing there in the distance, with an indifferent expression. On his shoulder was a colorful mirage butterfly. Illusion. Heaven-devouring beast's face turned ashen. He opened his mouth again, as if wanting to spit out the son of heaven and earth pagoda. But thinking that the dragon crystal was no longer there, how could the pagoda harm Xiaohua? In fact, even if he still had the dragon crystal now, how could he hurt Xiaohua? How did you know? Heaven-devouring beast's gaze fell on the first layer of the datura flower, and looked at the ghost inside. His heart felt like it was being twisted by a knife. He was really unwilling to accept this, so he asked absent-mindedly. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and looked at heaven-devouring beast. He was secretly happy in his heart. He didn't want to lie to heaven-devouring beast at all. If he really wanted to trick heaven-devouring beast, couldn't he just create an illusion? But he didn't expect that as soon as he appeared, heaven-devouring beast would confess without being pressed. So Xiaohua rolled his eyes and pushed the boat with the current, and made heaven-devouring beast's dragon crystal go away. Of course, Xiaohua didn't care whether this was heaven-devouring beast's cunning trick or not, because when heaven-devouring beast used the nine-toothed rake to hit his head, Xiaohua had already made a decision in his heart. Xiaohua smiled and said, "It's actually very simple. Heaven-devouring beast doesn't have any magical powers. He only relies on bewitching others. Who hung the Panga axe on Heaven Connecting Peak? Who placed the Chao Tiang's weapon and crystal? Who placed the Buddha and dragon statues, worshipped by the stone giants, and other prehistoric beasts on the primitive continent? All signs point to the fact that Heaven-devouring beast is only the mastermind behind the scenes. He has a spokesperson in front of the stage. Who is this person? The Heaven-devouring beast and Di Ting were not suitable because they were much stronger. Moreover, they were extremely loyal to Lord Dragon God and Maitreya Buddha, while a heavenly demon could not make use of them. Of course, it wasn't that the heavenly fiend didn't have the ability to do so. However, from what the Heaven-devouring beast and truth listener said and did, they didn't know of the heavenly fiend's existence. In fact, they were key to the heavenly fiend's other plans. Previously, I also suspected that it was the primordial 5 little ones. After all, they are stronger than you. Furthermore, they are more arrogant and easily controlled. However, when I get the Imperial Heaven Tower, and you're the only one here, do I still need to suspect anyone else? Moreover, fellow immortal Confucian cultivator said clearly that this heaven and earth pagoda is a mother-child pagoda. Now that we've reached the bottom, we still haven't seen the child pagoda. How could I not know that the magic tool you used to attack me was the child pagoda? However, I never expected you to have the dragon crystal of the dragon god. Damn it! Why didn't I find out earlier that you had a dragon crystal? Otherwise, why would there be so many changes? At this point, Xiaohua asked curiously, "That's right, sky-devouring beast. How did you end up hanging the Pango axe on the Tongtian Peak? At that time, didn't you know what the Tongtian Peak was for? When the Tongtian Peak collapsed, the flood fell from the sky. What were you thinking?" Sky-devouring beast hesitated for a moment before answering. The Panga axe was placed on the Heaven and Earth Child Pagoda. However, at that time, I didn't know that it was placed on the Tongtian Peak, but inside the Heaven and Earth Pagoda. Therefore, I never knew that there was a Tongtian Peak on the primordial continent. At that time, when I saw the Panga axe on the Tongtian Peak, I was also dumbfounded. When the Tongtian Peak collapsed and the flood fell, I didn't think too much about it. I didn't know if the flood would be able to kill all the living things in the primordial continent. Only when Taoist master mentioned it did I understand. How did the treasure inside the Heaven and Earth Pagoda get placed? Confucian cultivator Xiaohua asked. "This is not something that I can know," Sky-devouring beast said in a low voice. "When I came here, I only knew that there were 2 identical pagodas. Afterwards, the sky-devouring heavenly demon told them everything it knew. Xiaohua and the others roughly understood that besides the sky-devouring heavenly demon, there were many other exotic beasts in the Elysium continent. Of course, before the sky-devouring heavenly demon, the sky-devouring heavenly demon had done the same. However, this time, it was unknown whether it was Paradise Devil's luck or misfortune, but he finally realized all his plans. Unfortunately, he met Xiaohua again. After sky-devouring beast finished speaking, Xiaohua stretched out his hand and said, "Give me the Son of Heaven and Earth Pagoda." Yes, sky-devouring beast didn't dare to be negligent. It opened its mouth and spat out the Son of Heaven and Earth Pagoda. Confucian cultivator Xiaohua raised his hand and immediately took the Son of Heaven and Earth Pagoda in his hand. Next, 9 province cauldron spat out Aoran Chi into the Son of Heaven and Earth Pagoda, cleansing it. He looked up at Xiaohua and said, "Good fellow immortal, this Son of Heaven and Earth Pagoda doesn't have an avatar of Paradise Devil." Then, Xiaohua said coldly, "What is Paradise Devil's plan? How could he give himself away in such a small matter? If there is no accident." Then, Xiaohua pointed at sky-devouring beast and said, "This foodie also doesn't have an avatar of Paradise Devil." Confucian cultivator Xiaohua didn't feel reassured. He also used Aoran Chi on sky-devouring beast. Soul cultivator Xiaohua behind sky-devouring beast smiled and said, "The best way to control a person is to subtly influence their faith and make them believe that everything they do is true. Using an avatar to control their mind is a bad idea. Paradise Devil wouldn't do such a thing. Sure enough, Confucian cultivator Xiaohua didn't find anything strange about Sky-Devouring Beast. Sky-Devouring Beast, you haven't answered what this old man asked you earlier. Xiaohua stared at Sky-Devouring Beast and asked, when you knew that what you did could destroy the Great Desolation continent and kill billions of creatures, did you regret it? Speaking of regret, it's not like this little one didn't, Sky-Devouring Beast replied. However, this little one only regretted it for a moment. After all, it was for the survival of Maitreya Buddha. This little one doesn't regret anything. This little one is willing to do anything for Maitreya Buddha. Another extremely ignorant idiot. The scholarly cultivator Xiaohua scolded without pity. Actually, Xiaohua said word by word. Long before you made your move, this old man had already warned you. However, you turned a deaf ear, and actually still wanted to make your move. If this old man didn't see the opportunity early, I'm afraid that this old man would really be like these billions of ghosts, struggling bitterly here without being able to escape. Yes, this little one thinks about it now. At that time, Taoist master did indeed warn me. Sky-Devouring Beast smiled bitterly and said, however, at that time, this little one was wholeheartedly thinking about Maitreya Buddha and didn't care. Fellow Taoists, what do you think? Xiaohua looked up at his clones with a smile that wasn't a smile. However, Soul Cultivator Xiaohua and the others all smiled but didn't say anything. Only bone-tempering Xiaohua said at the top of his voice, since fellow Taoist has already made a decision, why do you still need us to say anything? Alas, Xiaohua sighed, looked at Sky-Devouring Beast and said, this old man has already given you many chances, but in the end, you still chose to attack this old man. Logically speaking, this old man should also take your life. Yes, this little one knows. At this time, Sky-Devouring Beast's life was already in Xiaohua's hands. How could he dare to say anything? However, after you sneak attacked this old man, you immediately chose to kill yourself. This really surprised this old man. Therefore, this old man is a little embarrassed to deal with you. Xiaohua changed the topic and said again, after all, you didn't hurt this old man at all. If I killed you, it would seem that this old man is narrow-minded. Moreover, you attacked for the sake of Maitreya Buddha's survival. This old man admires this belief. However, if I didn't attack you, I would punish you, right? This old man is somewhat unwilling in his heart. Tell me, how should this old man deal with you? This little one attacked Enlightened Master and deserves 10,000 deaths. Everything is up to Enlightened Master to deal with. Sky-Devouring Beast had long heard that Xiaohua would not take his life. At this time, how could he not know how to take advantage of the situation to get off the donkey? He hurriedly answered respectfully, how about this? Xiaohua said, you already said previously that you're willing to do anything for Maitreya Buddha. Is this true? Of course. Sky-Devouring Beast nodded vigorously. This little one would rather offend all the living beings in the primeval continent than be willing to let Maitreya Buddha's Buddhist light suffer any harm. Good then. Do you still remember what this old man said to the heaven-devouring beast previously? Namo Maitreya Buddha has actually already reincarnated. Xiaohua had just opened his mouth to speak when he was immediately interrupted by Sky-Devouring Beast. He said in surprise, this? How is this possible? Maitreya Buddha is already a Buddha Lord. How can he possibly reincarnate? This little one thought that you were deceiving the heaven-devouring beast previously. Xiaohua rolled his eyes at Sky-Devouring Beast, saying, do you think this old man is someone who deceives people? No. Sky-Devouring Beast hurriedly changed his words. Then what does Taoist Master mean? You're helping the evildoer. Helping the Huala heavenly devil destroy the world. You've already been tainted with boundless karma. Now, you no longer have the face to stay in the primeval continent. Rather than being beaten to death by the primeval continent's 5 little ones in the future, why don't you leave with this old man? Xiaohua said his plan. This old man will bring you to see your family's Maitreya Buddha Lord. You can stay by his side to protect him. Firstly, it's to atone for your sins. Secondly, it's also this old man's punishment for you. How is this possible? Sky-devouring beast said anxiously. Even if Maitreya Buddha Lord reincarnated, his magic power is still boundless. How is this possible? Buddha Bodhi smiled and interrupted Sky-devouring beast, saying, if that Maitreya Buddha had the power to protect himself, why would this poor monk snatch his Buddha fruit? Now that you have the opportunity to protect him and help him obtain Buddha fruit again, you might be able to mix in with the Buddha fruit, like an envoy or arhat in the future. Wouldn't that be better than being cursed by the people of this primeval continent? Taoist Master. Sky-devouring beast knelt on the ground again and kowtowed with tears streaming down his face, saying, how is this punishing this little one? This is simply helping this little one. This little one has a great ambition since young and is willing to protect Maitreya Buddha. What you want this little one to do is precisely this little one's lifelong wish. Chapter 4268. Heaven-devouring beast, get up. Xiaohua smiled. How could this old man not know about your narrow-mindedness? However, since you also have a great wish in your heart, this old man can't not fulfill your wish. Yes, Taoist. Heaven-devouring beast hurriedly got up and obediently stood at the side. This old man will keep you in the Kunlun mirror. When we return to this old man's world, I will release you. Xiaohua took out the Kunlun mirror and said, however, your origin. When we return to this old man's world, don't mention it again. Otherwise, this old man won't even need to find trouble with you. Other greedy cultivators will also make an example out of you. I believe you understand the trick of this better than this old man. If heaven-devouring beast was stupid, how could happiness-melting heavenly demon choose him? On the contrary, heaven-devouring beast looked simple and honest, but its heart was very cunning. How could it not know the importance of the matter Xiaohua was talking about? It hurriedly replied, yes, this little one understands. Good. Don't resist, this old man will keep you first. While speaking, Xiaohua shook the Kunlun mirror and kept heaven-devouring beast into its space. Seeing this, Buddha Bodhi praised, Namo Maitreya Buddha, Tanyu's action is really killing two birds with one stone. Ai, don't praise I anymore. Xiaohua kept the Kunlun mirror and said, if not for heaven-devouring beast's sincerity towards Namo Maitreya Buddha, I would have already killed it. After speaking, Xiaohua rubbed his hands and looked at the purple datura flower with fervent eyes. He asked Confucian cultivator Xiaohua, fellow Taoist, how many ghosts are there in here? Countless. Confucian cultivator Xiaohua's tone was somewhat gloomy. Other than the living beings that were killed in this calamity, there are many that were killed in the past. Namo Maitreya Buddha. Buddha Bodhi couldn't help but chant Buddha's name. He put his palms together, and his face was filled with boundless benevolence. Heavenly demon. In the end, he is still a heavenly demon. Xiaohua's heart suddenly sank, and a bitter taste appeared in his mouth. He turned to Buddha Bodhi and said, Master, do you think you want to transcend them? Or do you want I to lead them into the netherworld? Is there a difference? Buddha Bodhi smiled bitterly. Furthermore, with so many ghosts, how long will this poor monk transcend them? All right. Xiaohua nodded and no longer held back. He released his consciousness, and the netherworld origin force also rushed into the bottom level of the heaven and earth pagoda. Countless ghosts were sucked into Xiaohua's dimension, along with the netherworld origin force. Because the space had already changed, Xiaohua's mind also fell into the space along with these ghosts. Thus another strange scene puzzled Xiaohua. However, these ghosts did not fall into the dark side of the Shenhua continent. Instead, they rushed into the golden light high up in the sky. It was as if there was a dark side of the space in the shadow of the golden light. Xiaohua was shocked as he followed the ghost into the shadow of the golden light. However, something even more inexplicable happened. The ghost landed on the inside of Shenhua continent, but the position was slightly different. When he landed near the nether lotus and flew out of the inside of the space, he found himself in the space of Shenhua continent. Could it be that the inside of every space is the netherworld? And every netherworld is a part of the real netherworld? Xiaohua pinched his chin and pondered as he looked at the various spaces in the endless void. Although Xiaohua's mind and netherworld origin force were strong, it still took Xiaohua more than 10 days to collect all the ghosts that the happiness-melting heavenly devil had been collecting for so many years. When the ghosts at the bottom level were all gone, the purple datura flower trembled and closed again. Then the osmanthus, azaleas, peonies, chrysanthemums, orchids, camellias, lotus, and plum flowers closed one after another. The complete heaven and earth pagoda appeared in front of everyone again. Confucian cultivator Xiaohua first put away the mountain and river seal. Then he raised his hand and patted the 9 provinces' cauldrons. The 9 provinces' cauldrons let out a rumbling sound and turned into a giant 9-colored hand that fell on top of the heaven and earth pagoda. As Confucian cultivator Xiaohua urged his true energy, the heaven and earth pagoda let out a loud rumbling sound and was pulled out from the ground by Xiaohua. As the heaven and earth pagoda flew out, the entire inverted space trembled violently. Collect! Finally, Xiaohua patted his own head, and his 5-colored true qi turned into a huge cloud that covered the 9 continents' cauldrons and the heaven and earth pagoda. With a roar, he absorbed them into his body. Kacha! As soon as the heaven and earth pagoda disappeared from the inverted space, the second level of the heaven and earth pagoda cracked like glass. Then cracks appeared in the void. As soon as these cracks appeared, they immediately spread in all directions, and a large area of the void collapsed in these cracks. Boom boom! Looking at the countless cracks in the void, Xiaohua was overjoyed. He understood that the heaven and earth pagoda was the eye of the great world-destroying formation. Now that Xiaohua had absorbed the heaven and earth pagoda, the great world-destroying formation was also completely destroyed. These cracks in the void were the signs of the formation's collapse. But right at this moment, a fist-sized black hole suddenly appeared above the heads of Xiaohua and the others, where the previous spatial barrier was. Whether it was the normal space from before or the inverted space now, everything within it surged towards the black hole. Everything, whether it was boulders, mountains, trees, etc., turned into light and shadow and fell into the black hole. Moreover, when the light and shadow of the 2 spaces collided, it emitted an indescribable fluctuation, and a violent aura was emitted from the black hole. Not good. Xiaohua scanned with his divine sense, and immediately understood that this black hole was the starting point of the 2 spaces. Previously, when the heavenly demon was setting up the formation, everything was born from it. But now the formation was going against the flow, and everything was going to be destroyed. Xiaohua and his doppelgangers were also inside, so they would inevitably be annihilated in this black hole. Damn it, the heavenly demon actually left a trick here. Xiaohua was shocked and hurriedly recalled his doppelgangers. Then he activated the Kunlun mirror. The Kunlun mirror's light beam entered the void, and an abnormal distorted void passage appeared. Xiaohua did not hesitate to escape into it. When Xiaohua came out of the distorted space, he stepped into the sky above the imperial palace. At this moment, the rain that filled the sky had stopped. The space above the dome of heaven shattered, and in a moment it was restored. The blazing sun was also hanging in the sky. Haha! Xiaohua laughed. Then he scanned with his divine sense and said, "Everything is done. As long as this innate heavy water disappears, the great desolate continent will return to the great desolate continent of the past." Just as Xiaohua finished speaking, boom! A huge explosion came from below him. Then a towering water pillar appeared again. Xiaohua hurriedly teleported away. When the water pillar fell, a huge whirlpool appeared at the location of Chao Tian, Quebec. Xiaohua scanned with his divine sense, and immediately understood that after the black hole destroyed the 2 spaces, it produced a huge explosion, and a huge abyss was born under the ground. What a pity! Xiaohua recalled his divine sense and said regretfully, "This abyss is still not big enough to absorb the innate heavy water of the great desolate continent." However, before Xiaohua's regret disappeared, Xiaohua suddenly patted his forehead and said with a smile, "What is this? Since there is such an abyss, who cares about its size?" After saying that, Xiaohua activated the water escape technique and went to the bottom of the abyss. He sat down cross-legged and released his divine sense again, absorbing the innate heavy water near him into the space. As the saying goes, Water flows to the lower places. There was such a bottomless abyss in the great desolate continent. How could the innate heavy water not flow here? After an unknown amount of time, when all the innate heavy water of the great desolate continent fell into the abyss, the whirlpool above the abyss that never stopped rotating began to slow down. Finally, the innate heavy water in the abyss disappeared, revealing Xiaohua, who was sitting cross-legged at the bottom of the abyss. Perfect. Xiaohua collected the last of the innate heavy water and stood up with a smile. He clapped his hands and seemed to be talking to himself. Just when he was about to fly away, he smiled again and looked at the sky above the abyss. Master? At this time, 5 huge shadows appeared under the sun. One of the shadows in front cried out in surprise. Aren't they the great desolate 5 little ones? What did I say? How could the apocalypse of the great desolate continent be so easily eliminated? So it was Master who did it. The black jade Qilin was somewhat incoherent with excitement. He shouted in the air. If we didn't chase in the direction where the flood disappeared, we wouldn't know the truth. Xiaohua flew out of the abyss and looked at the excited black jade Qilin and the other great desolate 4 little ones. Although most of the scales of these 5 great desolate beasts were damaged, the brilliance on their bodies was also dim, and they looked very miserable. The joy between their brows was obvious. Xiaohua didn't say much. He first asked about the situation of the great desolate continent. When the great desolate 5 little ones roughly explained the situation, Xiaohua unconsciously frowned. The situation was far beyond his imagination. He still underestimated the power of the great demonic world annihilation formation. Although he almost didn't stop to find the flaws of the great formation, and then broke it without much delay, many strange beasts still died in the great desolate continent. Even the great desolate 5 little ones would have turned into white bones if they didn't use that mysterious formation to resist the flood together. Xiaohua released his divine sense and looked at the great desolate continent within tens of thousands of li. At this time, the great desolate continent was completely different from before. Those huge mountains and huge rocks were mostly corroded by the innate heavy water. Those towering peaks were no longer there. Everything looked similar to the scenery of the hidden immortal continent. However, the heaven and earth origin chi in his divine sense was still abundant. The water origin chi of heaven and earth origin chi was even denser than the other 4. Presumably, it wouldn't be long before this great desolate continent was restored to the great desolate continent full of vitality. Chapter 4269. After carefully sizing up the 5 little ones, Xiaohua's gaze fell on the ink jade Qilin. He said with a smile, Ink jade Qilin, I might leave this place very soon. You promised me before that wherever I go, you'll follow me. Do you still keep your word? The ink jade Qilin didn't expect Xiaohua to ask this as soon as they met. He unconsciously hesitated, but a moment later, he resolutely replied, Master, after this apocalyptic flood, I know what is called sincere unity and helping each other in the same boat. Therefore, I'm unwilling to leave them. If old Master insists on this lowly one following, this lowly one will definitely follow without any complaints. However, if old Master can show mercy and bring all of them along, that would be for the best. Why would I bring you along? Xiaohua smiled. Now that the great disaster of the wilderness has just passed, there are many things waiting to be done. You're the 5 little ones. How can you leave the wilderness? Forget it. Let the agreement between you and this old man go up in smoke. I only hope that you can restrain your unruly character in the future and treat the weak creatures of the wilderness well. Thank you, Master. The ink jade Qilin was overjoyed. He knelt down in front of Xiaohua and thanked him endlessly. The gold toad, multicolored peacock, black tortoise and black sky white tiger were also happy and knelt down. Seeing the 5 little ones thanking him, Xiaohua said with a smile, It's rare for you all to be enlightened. As the saying goes, a prodigal son is better than gold. Today, I'll also give you some benefits. With that, Xiaohua raised his hand, and a crystal light appeared on his fingers. Then, as if he had grown 5 arms, 5 similar fingers fell on the foreheads of the 5 little beasts of the great desolation. Boom! the ink jade Qilin, and the others felt their vision go dark. Countless wilderness catalog poured into their minds like a tide. They were shocked and hurriedly closed their eyes to comprehend. Xiaohua waved his sleeve and moved the 5 little ones to the ground. Then, he turned into the wind and floated away. After several tens of days, when the 5 little ones woke up, where was Xiaohua? What the 5 young ones of the primordial world did not expect was that Xiaohua had once again arrived at the heaven-reaching peak. Looking at the collapsed Tongtian Peak, the mountain looked like the backbone of a defeated hero. Its unyielding and indestructible aura was still emanating from it under the scorching sun. The strange beasts of the Eldritch continent did not dare to get too close to it. Xiaohua could not help but sigh and say, Tongtian Peak was originally innocent, but it fell into the hands of the heavenly demon of the Eldritch continent. It was a grave sin. The entire Eldritch continent was almost destroyed because of Tongtian Peak. Confucian cultivator Xiaohua nodded. Heaven Connecting Peak is the crystallization of the heart's blood of billions of stone giants. They also used their lives to build it. If he were to be placed in the Yorwild's continent, he would most likely be treated as a pillar of shame. No one knows what will happen in the future. The material of the Heaven's Connecting Peak seems to be very strange, and the refining method is also very mysterious. It's not something that I can see through. Green-robed Xiaohua's eyes were also shining. Moreover, under the innate heavy water, everything in the Eldritch continent was corroded. Only Tongtian Peak was not damaged in the slightest. This thing should be of great use. Actually, Phoenix Body Xiaohua hesitated for a moment and suggested, the material needed to refine the 5 elements wishful heaven connecting staff doesn't seem to be something like Tongtian Peak. However, since it's a divine object made by heaven, we shouldn't waste it. We might as well collect it first and see if it's useful in the future. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. He wrapped his mind around Tongtian Peak and tried to collect it. He shook his head and said, this thing was refined by the heavenly demon divine ability. Its weight has long exceeded I's ability. It's impossible to collect it in a short time. What a pity. The doppelgangers all felt that it was a pity. Just as Xiaohua turned and was about to fly away, Dragon Vein Xiaohua and Buddha Bodhi suddenly spoke at the same time. Fellow Taoist, don't worry. Oh! Xiaohua stared blankly, then said with a smile on his face, could it be that you 2 fellow Taoists have a way? Dragon Vein Xiaohua and Buddha Bodhi flew to Tongtian Peak. Dragon Vein Xiaohua first released his origin sense, sweeping from the top to the bottom of Tongtian Peak, while Buddha Bodhi released his Buddhist sense from the bottom to the top. After the 2 doppelgangers finished their inspection, they looked at each other and smiled. Dragon Vein Xiaohua flew in front of Xiaohua and said with a smile, congratulations, fellow Taoist. Although this Tongtian Peak is incomparably large, every inch of it is refined by the secret techniques of my Dragon Clan and Buddhist sect. If I and Master Bodhi work together, and with the cooperation of all fellow Taoists, we have a 60% chance of collecting it. Excellent. Xiaohua clapped his hands, bowed and said, thank you for your trouble, fellow Taoists. Dragon Bloodline Xiaohua and Buddha Subhoodie had a careful discussion for several days. Xiaohua and his doppelgangers listened attentively at the side. When the discussion was over, Dragon Bloodline Xiaohua revealed his 5-clawed true dragon form. The dragon crystal that had not yet been refined transformed into a scale armor and appeared outside his dragon body. Dragon Bloodline Xiaohua roared loudly. Dragon Bloodline Xiaohua's dragon armor emitted a dragon breath that made tens of thousands of people prostrate themselves before falling onto one end of Tongtian Peak. Dragon Bloodline Xiaohua's dragon breath seeped out from the depths of Tongtian Peak, transforming into an inch-long dragon form that swam towards the other end of Tongtian Peak. At the other end of the broken Tongtian Peak, Buddha Subhoodie held the Tree of 7 Wonders in his hand and chanted scriptures. 7 rays of light fell onto Tongtian Peak. Golden runes similarly seeped out from the light. These golden runes were like Bodhi trees that were more than an inch long, spreading towards the other end of Tongtian Peak. It took no less than 10 days for the dragon marks and Bodhi trees to completely cover the broken section of Tongtian Peak. Sure enough, it was as Dragon Vein Xiaohua said. Within every inch of space of Tongtian Peak, the dragon marks and Bodhi trees were very abstrusely intertwined. A kind of heaven and earth truth faintly emerged from within. Alas! Xiaohua saw this scene and couldn't help but sigh with emotion. The heavenly Tao is boundless, but I was born with a cliff. Rise! Dragon Vein Xiaohua let out a dragon roar from one side of Tongtian Peak, and hundreds of millions of dragon marks rushed up along with the dragon roar. Rise! Buddha Bodhi opened his mouth almost at the same time, chanting Buddha's name. The wonderful tree of 7 treasures was also lifted up as heavy as 10,000 caddies, and hundreds of millions of Bodhi trees also soared into the sky along with the dragon marks. Boom! The entire earth trembled, and that huge broken Tongtian Peak actually showed signs of being lifted up. Seeing this, Xiaohua couldn't help but be overjoyed. At the same time he released his consciousness, he shouted, "Fellow Taoists, please make your move. Rise!" Green-robed Xiaohua shouted loudly, and took out the sword gourd. Tens of thousands of spirit execution vital light flew out, and wrapped around a part of Tongtian Peak. Confucian cultivator Xiaohua also didn't show any weakness. 9 cauldrons flew out, and the 5-colored true qi also turned into a huge cauldron shape, wrapping around a part of Tongtian Peak. Phoenix body Xiaohua let out a long cry, and flew to the bottom of Tongtian Peak. His whole body flickered with the power of the moon and stars, and countless invisible light pillars descended from the sky, also lifting up a part of Tongtian Peak. Devil spirit Xiaohua landed in another place. Devil light surged around his body, and he turned into a 10,000 zhang tall devil body. That big hand firmly grasped the mountain rocks of Tongtian Peak, and countless devils roared as they lifted up Tongtian Peak. Bone-tempering Xiaohua took out the celestial white bone. The 3-headed, 6-armed celestial white bone spewed out a light pillar that covered Tongtian Peak. The 6 arms, along with the expansion of the avatar, directly lifted up the last part of Tongtian Peak with their hands. Withdraw! Seeing that the huge broken Tongtian Peak was being moved by the concerted efforts of the many clones, Xiaohua hurriedly urged his secret technique, and his consciousness mixed with divine sense fell on Tongtian Peak. Withdraw! Sensing Xiaohua's secret technique, the many clones urged their divine abilities at the same time. Wang! A strange howl sounded, and it seemed like the nearby space was collapsing and bursting. Along with this howl, the broken Tongtian Peak was lifted up a few inches, and that incomparably huge broken Tongtian Peak immediately and strangely disappeared. Hong hong hong. Along with the disappearance of the broken Tongtian Peak, countless explosions and uncontrollable fluctuations crazily rushed out everywhere. Whether it was Dragon Vein Xiaohua, Buddha Bodhi, or even Phoenix body Xiaohua, their bodies flashed with indescribable brilliance as they hurriedly urged their secret techniques to suppress the divine abilities that were about to go out of control. Needless to say, Xiaohua's face was already pale gold, and his entire body showed signs of collapsing. There were faint traces of blood between his eyebrows, and the surface of his Ni-1 palace was bursting with various innate divine seals. Xiaohua's divine sense and mind were already exhausted. Xiaohua didn't dare to say anything, and he hurriedly took some medicinal pellets to adjust his breathing. The other clones also sat cross-legged in various places and quietly cultivated. After a few months, the recovered Xiaohua and his clones once again put the other half of the broken Tongtian Peak into the space, and then rather weakly left Tongtian Peak and flew towards the teleportation array. The teleportation array was the key for Xiaohua to leave the great desolate continent, so outside the teleportation array, there was a capital heavenly star array personally set up by green-robed Xiaohua. Seeing that the capital heavenly star array hadn't suffered any damage, Xiaohua only checked it for a moment, and then left Confucian cultivator Xiaohua in the array, letting him use the Confucian secret technique to continue modifying the teleportation array. He took the other clones to the magma, where they first encountered the stone giant. The surface of the magma was completely covered by innate heavy water, and the thick magma stones were several hundred li deep. However, it was also because of the innate heavy water's cover that an extremely fierce power was constantly brewing and roaring under the magma. Previously, when the flood was overflowing, the innate heavy water constantly seeped in, extinguishing this power bit by bit. Now the innate heavy water no longer existed, and after the heat of the magma solidified the innate heavy water, it penetrated to the surface again. Great! Xiaohua looked at all this, and couldn't help but clap his hands in praise. The heavenly Tao is just, and all things have their Tao. But when it's destroyed, the germination of rebirth has already been deeply implanted. This Xiao thought that although this apocalypse had disappeared, after all, the great desolate continent had been ravaged by the innate heavy water for many days, and this injury was extremely difficult to recover from. But now, it seems that things are far from what this Xiao can speculate. Perhaps in a few days, when the magma breaks through the surface, a new world will arrive. Chapter 4270. More than that. Soul cultivator Xiaohua also smiled. He raised his hand and pointed to the distance. That was not where the magma was, but after the innate heavy water corroded the hill, it seeped into the ground. But from the surface, it was mottled with rocks, completely devoid of life. However, the place Xiaohua pointed to was the place where the innate heavy water did not seep in. There were many seeds emitting green shadows, and clusters of vigorous life force were already brewing there. Life and death, death and life. Death is the beginning of life, and at the same time, life is also the beginning of death. There is a glimmer of life in any apocalypse. The evolution of the heavenly Tao is just like this. Witnessing death and 10,000 layers of life force, Phoenix body Xiaohua was extremely emotional, and shouted happily. Even we can also treat this apocalypse as the arrival of another golden age. Not bad, not bad. Bonehone Xiaohua also clapped and said. In the past, the stone giants were as simple and honest as I, and were always bullied by others. In the future, they will be the powerhouses of this great desolate continent. Hearing this, Xiaohua unconsciously muttered to himself. Green-robed Xiaohua understood Xiaohua's narrow-mindedness the most. He looked at Xiaohua with a smile that was not a smile and said, What? Is fellow Taoist still unwilling? Xiaohua pinched his chin and said with a rather sinister smile. Hee in eyes space. Even birds have to pluck a feather. The stone giants, the wood giants, and the others are hiding from a disaster here. How can I let them go so easily? Xiaohua was naturally not as narrow-minded as others thought. Previously, when there was only one Shenhua continent, Xiaohua would definitely not hesitate to release these strange beasts. But now, there were many continents in his space, and that golden light was clearly corresponding to the high-level space of the upper realm. If Xiaohua left the great desolate continent, where would he find strange beasts corresponding to the high-level space? Today, when he released these strange beasts, the space would become barren, and he was somewhat unwilling. Fellow Taoist, why are you in a daze? Green-robed Xiaohua disdainfully said. His attitude was really a bit like, "You have white hair all over your body, and you call others a demon." He said, "You collected so many souls in the imperial palace. Which one of them after reincarnation didn't become strange beasts? These beasts are just a drop in the ocean compared to them." Xiaohua's heart was moved after hearing the green-robed Xiaohua's words. However, when he thought about it carefully, he snorted disdainfully. If the beasts that died in the Great Desolation Continent could only be reincarnated into the Great Desolation Continent, then Lord Dragon God and Maitreya Buddha couldn't be reincarnated into the Hidden Immortal Continent and Dawn Rain Continent. "What do you know?" Xiaohua said with a smile. "Even Namo Maitreya Buddha doesn't dare to speak about the mysteries of reincarnation. How much can you possibly know? How about this?" The soul cultivator Xiaohua suggested. "Fellow Taoist, you don't have to leave all the primitive beasts here. You can leave some of them in pairs and send the rest back to the primitive continent." "Good." Xiaohua laughed heartily, but after clapping his hands, he blinked his eyes and asked, "The stone giants don't seem to differentiate between male and female. Isn't this giving a difficult problem?" Xiaohua's words were naturally a joke. However, just as he was about to enter the space, boom boom, a loud sound came from afar. Xiaohua hurriedly raised his head and saw a pillar of flame mixed with black smoke in the distant sky. Xiaohua was shocked and hurriedly released his divine sense. However, when he saw everything clearly, his face was not shocked but happy instead. He said with a smile, "There seems to be magma gushing out from the ground in front of us. Not to mention other things, the destruction of the innate heavy water is about to be eliminated in a few dozen li of magma." Yes, the doppelgangers also said with a smile, "Let's go take a look." Xiaohua and the others were not in a hurry. They slowly flew over, and also released their divine sense to check other places along the way. Just as they saw, the area where the stone giants lived was where the magma was more active. The innate heavy water could only cover it for a while. Now the magma everywhere had begun to erupt eagerly. Now, the magma had already erupted in places where the surface was more solid, and less innate heavy water had penetrated. When Xiaohua and the others arrived, the gushing magma had already gradually decreased. However, there was still a lot of powder that drifted to many places. When the powder landed, it covered the surface corroded by the innate heavy water. Xiaohua's figure landed and picked up some grayish-black powder from the ground. He twirled it between his index finger and thumb a few times, then put it in front of his nose and sniffed. Although there was a pungent smell, Xiaohua's face still revealed a smile and said, "Not bad. This thing is very useful. It won't be long before the place where it lands will become fertile soil." "Ah, this. You can even know this." The green-robed Xiaohua was shocked and hurriedly landed. He imitated Xiaohua and twirled some powder and sniffed it. Other than the pungent smell, he really couldn't smell anything else. "This is farming that I learned since I was young," Xiaohua said with a smile. "How can you know? Since you were young. Is it here?" The green-robed Xiaohua asked curiously. The smile on Xiaohua's face faded a little. He raised his head and looked at the dusk sky, then looked at the still unfamiliar land. He shook his head slightly and said, "This? I don't know at this time." "Hee, if there's a chance, I want to see what kind of place you live," the green-robed Xiaohua said with a mischievous smile. "I also want to learn how to smell this powder." "Cultivate seriously," Xiaohua nodded. "When we succeed in our divine ability, there will definitely be a chance." "And I believe there will definitely be a chance." The green-robed Xiaohua nodded firmly. His gaze seemed to pass through the sky, through the turbulence of the world, and even more so through Xiaohua's memories. Xiaohua originally wanted to send out the strange beasts from the space, but seeing the great changes on the surface of the Great Desolate Continent, he wasn't in a hurry. He simply brought his clones and flew into the depths of the Great Desolate Continent. Along the way, pillars of fire filled the sky, black smoke filled the sky, and even many places collapsed. Some mountain ranges stretched out from the ground along with the eruption of magma. Seeing that the air was so unbearable, Xiaohua and the soul cultivator Xiaohua activated the lightning and thunder technique again. The sky was densely covered with dark clouds, lightning flashed and thunder roared. The rainstorm was born again. However, this time the rainstorm wasn't the CNT on heavy water, but the real rain. Xiaohua didn't use this technique of clouds and rain, but once he used it, it was beyond his control. After all, the entire great desolate continent hadn't had any rain for many years. After the CNT on heavy water, the water-type origin energy of heaven and earth that was imprisoned by the heaven and earth pagoda's formation began to recover. The dark rain in the sky not only had a tendency to continue, but also spread towards the great desolate continent. No way. Looking at the whole world, the rain poured down, the magma roared, the mountains rose up, and the rivers formed into rivers. Xiaohua cried out like a frightened bird. I won't also create a world-ending disaster, right? Haha, don't worry, fellow Taoist. Phoenix body Xiaohua laughed. Although the water-type origin energy of heaven and earth in this world is raging, it's all under the suppression of the other origin energies of heaven and earth. The power of the stars and moon in the distance has also begun to descend. Dozens of days passed like this, and the sky began to clear up. A ray of sunlight pierced through the thick dark clouds in the sky like a giant sword. Then, all the dark clouds began to dissipate. Fierce winds suddenly rose, and a seven-colored rainbow bridge ran through the world. The whole great desolate continent seemed to have just been cleansed, and was exceptionally clean. It really was a sign of another kind of golden age coming. Fellow Taoist bone tempering, how about you go take a look at the situation underground? Xiaohua's divine sense had already seen it, but he still didn't feel at ease, and ordered bone tempering Xiaohua to go. Before long, bone tempering Xiaohua returned and reported, Fellow Taoist, there's still some magma surging under the ground, but most of it has already stabilized. Good. Xiaohua was overjoyed, and said with a smile, Fellow Taoists, now we can release the strange beasts we've taken in. Then, Xiaohua's divine sense entered the space, and according to Soul Cultivator Xiaohua's suggestion, he left some of the weaker strange beasts in pairs, and released the rest. When collecting the strange beasts, all the Fortune Gate's disciples were dispatched, and it took a long time to complete. When releasing the strange beasts, there was no need to mobilize the Fortune Gate's disciples. Xiaohua and his avatars only needed to go to various places and find a suitable place to throw these strange beasts into, and let them settle down on their own. After being educated, these strange beasts were no longer comparable to their former selves. Not to mention anything else, just the stone giants. These stone giants looked at the place that was completely different from before, and the unfamiliar environment, but they didn't panic at all. Those with spiritual power used some of their magical powers to break the hard surface of the magma. Those without spiritual power started to work in the deep hole that they broke open. With the stone giants' cooperation, they soon opened a passage to the magma. With the magma, the stone giants had a home, and each of them looked for their own nest. Several months passed in this manner. When Xiaohua sent the last batch of strange beasts into a mountain range, he finally let out a long sigh of relief and soared into the sky. When he came to a stop, as far as his eyes could see, a scene of lush greenery fell into his eyes. A continuous rain had sent enough water to the earth, and the seeds of life under the dry earth had the opportunity to grow. They couldn't bear the loneliness and poked their heads out from the earth. Not to mention, Xiaohua had already prepared food seeds and spiritual seeds in the space. When his avatar sent out the strange beasts, they also threw these food seeds and spiritual seeds on the desolate mainland's land. Several months' time was enough for these food seeds and spiritual seeds to germinate, and also enough time for vegetation to cover the land and mountains. With green, would a colorful life be far away? Chapter 4271. Haha, it's a success! Green-robed Xiaohua proudly roared at the ground, without using a trace of magic power. Xiaohua listened to the sound disappear in the sky, and smiled without saying anything. In the next few days, Phoenix Body Xiaohua, Green-robed Xiaohua, and the others returned to the space early or late. Each of them stood beside Xiaohua with eyes full of hope. Looking at the land of hope, their hearts were brimming with pride. Describing them as the birth of a new world in their hands was too much of a merit. But the fact that a new world was preserved in their hands was well deserved. Such merit and fortune were not things that ordinary cultivators could come across. And similarly, they were not things that ordinary cultivators could obtain. It's just a matter of time. It's not a success. Green-robed Xiaohua said after his excitement died down. Green-robed Xiaohua was stunned. He scratched his head and asked curiously, "There are no more strange beasts in the space? Could it be that fellow Taoist has hidden some?" Damn it. Xiaohua was sweating in his heart. He first brought the strange beasts out of the star halo in the sky and sent them to the space where Shenhua continent was located. Then, he had these clones send them to various places. Whether there were any strange beasts in the star halo or not, the clones didn't know. However, green-robed Xiaohua exposed it with a single sentence. Obviously, he had the same small plan as Xiaohua. The strange beasts have been properly arranged, but the disciples of fragrance cult have not been arranged yet. Xiaohua said unhappily. "Oh, these little things," green-robed Xiaohua said indifferently. "Isn't it just looking for a place with them? Isn't that easy?" Green-robed Xiaohua said with a smile. Green-robed fellow Taoist is right. The previous desolate continent was not suitable for the human race. But after the apocalypse, although the environment is still different from the hidden immortal continent, it is enough for the disciples of fragrance cult to survive. I pass by a place that is very suitable for these disciples. Xiaohua's face lit up. Just as he was about to ask, a figure flashed beside him. Confucian cultivator Xiaohua appeared in the air. "How is it?" Xiaohua's eyes lit up again and asked hurriedly. Confucian cultivator Xiaohua said with a smile that was neither arrogant nor humble. "Fellow Taoists, fortunately, I didn't disappoint you." "Good." Xiaohua clapped and said. "Fellow Taoist has made a great contribution." "You flatter me." Confucian cultivator Xiaohua waved his hand and said. "It's all thanks to fellow immortal green-robed and fellow immortal soul cultivator. The teleportation formation you constructed was very good. With this foundation, this little one's Confucian cultivation secret technique will be very easy to succeed. Therefore, this little one doesn't dare to claim credit." "Haha, you're welcome, you're welcome." The green-robed Xiaohua proudly looked at Xiaohua and said with a smile, "I can also be of great use now. It's a pity that no one even knows his name now." Xiaohua was first stunned, and then he understood that this green-robed Xiaohua's wisdom and character were the most mature. Now he wants to ask for a status from me. "Many thanks to the Thunderbolt Venerable." Xiaohua thanked the green-robed Xiaohua. "In the future, there will no longer be a green-robed Xiaohua in this world, only the Thunderbolt Immortal." "Ha ha ha, fellow Taoist Xiao. You're welcome, you're welcome." The Thunderbolt Immortal happily helped Xiaohua up. "Many thanks to Taoist Wu." Xiaohua then saluted the soul cultivator Xiaohua and said, "In the future, there will be no soul cultivator Xiaohua in this family, only shamans." Shamans didn't feel much about this status, nodded and said, "Fellow Taoist, do as you please." Soon after, Xiaohua thanked all his clones, one by one, and declared that there will no longer be a clone Xiaohua in this world. "Now we should be able to pass through the time turbulence, right?" Xiaohua then asked Wenchu somewhat worriedly. How would Wenchu know? He could only shake his head and said with a bitter smile, "There should be no problem with this sage information, but before we use it, who knows what kind of accident will happen? AI, we must not have any more accidents." Xiaohua sighed. "We have been wandering in the outside world for too long. We have been here for several tens of thousands of years. We don't care about this anymore." The Thunderbolt Immortal bluntly attacked. "If Xian wants to get married, even an immortal emperor would not be able to stop her." "You really have a crow's mouth." Shaman scolded in both anger and amusement. "Let's go, fellow Taoist Feng Wu. Let us take a look at that place." Xiaohua waved his hand, as if he wanted to get rid of these worries, and said, "Okay." Feng Wu let out a long cry, spread her wings and flew to a place. In just a few days, Xiaohua and the others arrived at a huge mountain range. This mountain range was thousands of feet high, surrounded by rivers, and above the mountain range were ancient trees and vegetation. Previously, Feng Wu had sowed some seeds of grain and some spiritual herbs, and gradually took shape. Great! This is a blessed land. Xiao Hua's divine sense swept over, and immediately said with a smile, "The disciples of the fragrance cult will be able to pass down the incense of the fragrance cult." The thunderbolt immortal pondered for a moment, and said, "There seems to be some long spiked beasts nearby. These long spiked beasts like to eat small animals. I am afraid that the disciples of the fragrance cult will not be safe here." Xiao Hua rolled his eyes, and said with a smile that was not a smile, "What fellow Taoist Feng Wu wants to do something? Of course." The thunderbolt immortal said proudly, "Although they are disciples of the fragrance cult, they have nothing to do with I. But after all, they are of the human race. How can I just stand by and watch? Then I will have to trouble you, fellow Taoist." Xiao Hua was very gratified, and he cupped his hands and smiled. "We will also help." Wu Wen Chu Feng Wu, and even Tian Run and Shi came to join in the fun. Thus, everyone joined hands, and laid down a great formation within a radius of 10,000 li. It took them several months to complete their task. However, in the end all the cultivators were dumbfounded. This great formation had a Dharma formation, an origin formation, a devil formation, and even a soul formation. Although the power of the great formation was there, no one could activate it. Thus, everyone looked at Xiao Hua, who knew that Xiao Hua turned a deaf ear to everyone's expectations. And he flew up, looked at the ground, and then waved his hand and said, "Everyone, we will hide ourselves first. I will release the disciples of the fragrance cult from the Shenhua continent." Although the sect leader of the fragrance cult did not say anything, when he handed the disciples over to I, he did not let the disciples see I's face, because he did not want us to leave any impression on the disciples of the fragrance cult. TSK, is there a need for that? The thunderbolt immortal flew up with some disdain, and like everyone else he hid himself, but he still had some complaints. When Xiao Hua placed the disciples of the aroma religion in the mountain range, he placed all the cultivation methods, pills, spirit herbs, and magic tools aside. His heart was moved again, and he also placed some of the Tao sect's cultivation methods and secret techniques he had obtained in the aroma religion. He only promised not to embezzle the things of the fragrance cult, but he did not promise not to give them more things. The disciples of the fragrance cult had inherited the method of cultivating the primordial spirit, and also the method of cultivating the nascent soul. It was not too much, was it? After doing all this, Xiao Hua's figure once again teleported to a high altitude, and his hands began to form hand seals. Taoist magic, Confucian cultivation methods, soul cultivation methods, and demonic cultivation methods. When the same magic power, demonic qi, and so on turned into crystals and fell into the void, the entire sky was filled with 9 brilliant colors, and all kinds of fluctuations were like dragons dancing in the air. Rumbling sounds were more deafening than thunder. Xiao Hua's figure turned into a golden body, and when he raised his hands, dozens of rainbow-colored halos were born from his hands, and they were scattered everywhere like chains. All the disciples of the fragrance cult opened their mouths in surprise, and were somewhat at a loss. Buzz! A strange rumbling sound began to be born from the thunder, like the roar of a god. Then, Xiao Hua's golden body suddenly withdrew, and the chains fell into his hands, followed by tens of thousands of restrictions of various colors. When these restrictions fell into Xiao Hua's hands, he slowly waved his hands and shouted, "Go!" The entire brilliance condensed into the shape of a halo. Xiao Hua then waved his hand, and a jade eye appeared. When Xiao Hua channeled his magic power, the halo hit the jade eye. Clang! The jade eye condensed into the shape of a tiger talisman. Xiao Hua picked up the tiger talisman, and casually threw it to a disciple of the fragrance cult. Then he said, "This place is no longer a ruin. This mountain range is where you all will live in the future. In order for you all to survive here, this old man has already built a formation in the nearby mountains. This is the proof to enter and exit the formation. You all should take care of it. You don't need to ask who this old man is. You just need to remember to live well here and cultivate. As long as the orthodoxy of the incense religion can be carried down safely, it will be your contribution." With that, Xiaohua didn't care about what the tens of thousands of disciples of the fragrance cult were thinking. He waved his hands again, and tens of thousands of thunderbolts fell on the formation. The entire formation slowly lit up, and Xiaohua's figure turned into a rainbow and flew towards the location of the sun in the sky. We thank Senior. The disciples of the fragrance cult were shocked by Xiaohua's big move, and they all prostrated on the ground and kowtowed. After Xiaohua left the mountain range, the Thunderbolt Immortal almost held his stomach and laughed. He pointed at Xiaohua and said, "Dao friend, I really admire you." Although the fragrance cult's ancestor didn't want his disciples to see Dao friend's appearance, but Dao friend's actions will leave an impression in their hearts. Won't it be even more unforgettable than seeing Dao friend's appearance? Xiaohua didn't feel embarrassed seeing that his petty actions were seen through by the Thunderbolt Immortal. He stiffened his neck and retorted, "What? Do you not want to leave your name? Otherwise you'll be inside the formation." When he saw that Xiaohua was about to expose his past, the lightning Taoist's face flushed red, and he was about to interrupt Xiaohua. However, at this moment, the sound of bamboo flutes suddenly resounded throughout the heavens and the earth. After that, hundreds of millions of flowers appeared out of thin air. At the same time, over 10 dragons and phoenixes appeared in midair, while waves of golden threads descended like rain from above Xiaohua and the others. This. What's going on? The Thunderbolt Immortal turned pale with fright. Because of the birth of these flowers, the entire world was imprisoned. Not to mention sound, even thoughts were difficult to move. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.